Just see where we at. Let's see. Here we go. Alright, it should be in the Jumbotron soon. Okay, so let's start on Special Field Order 15. So, ordered by the commander of the Military Division of the Mississippi in the field, Savannah, Georgia, January 16th, 1865. Special Field Orders number 15. 1. The island from Charleston south, the abandoned rice fields along the rivers for 30 miles back from the sea, and the country bordering the St. Johns River, Florida, are reserved and set apart for the settlement of Negroes now made free by the acts of war and the proclamation of the President of the United States. 2. At Beaufort, Hilton Head, Savannah, Fernandina, St. Augustine, and Jacksonville, the blacks may remain in their chosen or accustomed vocations, but on the islands and in the settlements hereafter to be established, no white person whatever, unless military officers and soldiers detailed for duty, will be permitted to reside, and the sole and exclusive management of affairs will be left to the free people themselves, subject only to the United States military authority and the acts of Congress. Now that's pretty badass. Like, we need to get back to that. By the laws of war and the orders of the President of the United States, the Negro is free and must be dealt with as such. He cannot be subjected to subscription or forced military service save by the written orders of the highest military authority of the department, under such regulations as the President or Congress may prescribe. Domestic servants, blacksmiths, carpenters, and other mechanics will be free to select their own work and residence, but the young and able bodied Negroes must be encouraged to enlist as soldiers in the service of the United States to contribute their share towards maintaining their own freedom and securing their rights as citizens of the United States. Negroes so enlisted will be organized into companies, battalions, and regiments under the orders of the United States military authorities and will be paid, fed, and clothed according to law. The bounties paid on enlistment may, with the consent of the recruit, go to assist his family and settlement in procuring agricultural implements, seeds, tools, boots, clothing, and other articles necessary for their livelihood. 3. Whenever three respectable Negroes, heads of families, shall desire to settle on land, and shall have selected for that purpose an island or locality clearly defined within the limits above designated, the inspector of settlements and plantations will himself, or by such subordinate officer as he may appoint, give them a license to settle such island or district, and afford them such assistance as he can to enable them to establish a peaceful agricultural settlement. The three parties named will subdivide the land, under the supervision of the inspector, among themselves and such others as may choose to settle near them, so that each family shall have a plot of not more than 40 acres of tillable ground, and when it borders on some water channel with not more than 800 feet waterfront, in the possession of which the land, or sorry, in the possession of which land the military authorities will afford them protection until such time as they can protect themselves, or until Congress shall regulate their title. The quartermaster may, on the requisition of the Inspector of Settlements and Plantations, place at the disposal of the inspector one or more of the captured steamers to ply between the settlements and one or more of the commercial points heretofore named in orders to afford the settlers the opportunities to supply their necessary wants and to sell the products of their land and labor. 4. Whenever a Negro has enlisted in the military service of the United States, he may locate his family in any of the settlements at pleasure and acquire a homestead and all other rights and privileges of a settler, as though present in person. In person. In like manner, Negroes may settle their families and engage on board the gunboats, or in fishing, or in the navigation of the inland waters, without losing any claim to land or other advantages derived from this system. But no, but no one, unless an actual settler as above defined, or unless absent on government service, will be entitled to claim any right to land or property in any settlement by virtue of these orders. Basically, only we can claim that land. 5. In order to carry out this system of settlement, a general officer will be detailed as inspector of settlements and plantations, whose duty it shall be to visit the settlements, to regulate their police and general management, and who will furnish personally to each head of a family, subject to the approval of the President of the United States, a possessory title in writing, giving as near as possible the description of boundaries, and who shall adjust all claims or conflicts that may arise under the same, subject to the like approval, treating such titles altogether as possessory. The same general officer will also be charged with the enlistment and organization of the Negro recruits, and protecting their interests while absent from their settlements, and will be governed by the rules and regulations prescribed by the War Department for such purposes. 6. Brigadier General R. Saxon is hereby appointed Inspector of Settlements and Plantations and will at once enter on the performance of his duties. No change is intended or desired in the settlement now on Beaufort, Port Royal Island, nor will any rights to property heretofore acquired be affected thereby. By order of Major General W.T. Sherman. So that's the first one. So that's Special Field Order 15, which we've all heard about. Um, Next, I'm going to read through the Freedmen's Bureau Act, and then Freedmen's Bank, and then we'll hop into like a discussion. But keep in mind how specific things are and what we were entitled to as we go through this. So that's Special Field Order 15. Let's go to um, the next act. Give me 1 second, switch my screens. Freedmen Bureau Act. Okay. So, law creating the Freedmen's Bureau, an act to establish a bureau for the relief of freedmen and refugees. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled, that there is hereby established in the War Department to continue during the present War of Rebellion and for 1 year thereafter, a Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, to which shall be committed, as hereinafter provided, the supervision and management of all abandoned lands and the control of all subjects relating to refugees and freedmen from rebel states or from any district of country within the territory embraced in the operations of the Army under such rules and regulations as may be prescribed by the head of the Bureau and approved by the President. The said Bureau shall be under the management and control of a commissioner to be appointed by the President by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, whose compensation shall be $300 per annum, and such numbers of clerks as may be assigned to him by the Secretary of War, not exceeding one chief clerk, 2 of the 4th class, 2 of the 3rd class, and 5 of the 1st class. And the commissioner and all persons appointed under this act shall be entering upon their duties, take the oath of office prescribed in an act entitled An Act to Prescribe an Oath of Office and Other Purposes, approved July 2nd, 1862. And the commissioner and the chief clerk shall, before entering upon their duties, give bonds to the treasurer of the United States, the former in sum of $50,000 and the latter in the sum of $10,000, conditioned for the faithful discharge of their duties, respectively, with secretaries to be approved as sufficient by the Attorney General, which bonds shall be filled in the office of the first comptroller of the Treasury, to be by him put in suit for the benefit of any injured party upon any breach of conditions thereof. Section 2. And be it further enacted that the Secretary of War may direct such issues of provisions, clothing, and fuel as he may deem needful for the immediate and temporary shelter and supply of destitute and suffering refugees and freedmen and their wives and children under such rules and regulations as he may direct. Section 3. And it be further enacted that the President may, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, appoint an assistant commissioner for each of the states declared to be an insurrection, not exceeding 10 in number, who shall, under the direction of the commissioner, aid in the execution of the provisions of this act. And he shall give a bond to the treasurer of the United States and the sum of $20,000 in the form and manner prescribed in the first section of this act. Each of said commissioners shall receive an annual salary of $2,500 in full compensation for all his services. And any military officer may be detailed and assigned to duty under this act without increase of pay or allowances. The commissioner shall, before the commencement of each regular session of Congress, make full report of his proceedings with exhibits of the state of his accounts to the President, who shall communicate the same to Congress, and shall also make special reports whenever required to do so by the President or either House of Congress. And the assistant commissioners shall make quarterly reports of their proceedings to the commissioner, and also such other special reports as from time to time may be required. Now, this is where the entire South was basically broken up into military districts, and each had like a military governor. That's what that's talking about, basically. Section 4. And be it further enacted that the commissioner, under the direction of the President, shall have authority to set apart for the use of loyal refugees and freedmen such tracts of land within the insurrectionary states as shall have been abandoned, or to which the United States shall have acquired title by confiscation or sale or otherwise, and to every male citizen, whether refugee or freedman, as aforesaid, there should be assigned not more than 40 acres of such land, and the person to whom it was so assigned shall be protected in the use and enjoyment of the land for the term of 3 years at an annual rent not exceeding 6% upon the value of such land, as it was appraised by the state authorities in the year 1860, for the purpose of taxation, and in case no such appraisal can be found, then the rental shall be based upon the estimated value of the land in said year, to be ascertained in such manner as the commissioner may by regulation prescribe. At the end of said term, or at any time during said term, the occupants of any parcel so assigned may purchase the land and receive such title thereto as the United States can convey, upon paying, therefore, the value of the land as ascertained and fixed for the purposes of determining the annual rent aforesaid. Section 5. And be it further enacted that all acts and parts of acts inconsistent with the provisions of this act are hereby repealed. Approved March 3rd, 1865. So, in these first two documents, Special Field Order 15 and the Freedmen's Bureau Act, they both mention our 40 acres. And another interesting fact is the Freedmen's Bureau Act and the Freedmen's Bank Act, which we're about to read next, were both signed on March 3rd, 1865, prior to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which were signed later in 1865. Okay, so let's now read through the Freedmen's Bank Act. So let me switch screens again. Okay, here we go. Okay, so y'all should be able to see the screen now. Okay, an act to incorporate the Freedmen Savings and Trust Company. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled. They mention a bunch of names. I don't know if I feel like reading them all. Basically, it's a bunch of white people. No black people were, as they call, and it says, and their successors are constituted a body corporate in the city of Washington in the District of Columbia by the name of the Freedmen Savings and Trust Company, and by that name may sue and be sued in any court of the United States. Basically, all these white people that are mentioned here are all the owners of the bank. So they were like the trustees of the bank. So the bank was not controlled by freedmen, which it should be. Um, but the proof is in the pudding. All their names are right here for everyone to see for posterity. Okay. Section 2. And be it further enacted that the persons named in the first section of this act shall be the first trustees of the fore corporation, and all vacancies by death, resignation, or otherwise in the office of trustee shall be filled by the board by ballot without unnecessary delay, and at least 10 votes shall be necessary for the election of any trustee. The trustees shall hold a regular meeting at least once in each month to receive reports of their officers on the affairs of the corporation and to transact such business as may be necessary, and any trustee omitting to attend the regular meetings of the board for 6 months in succession may thereupon be considered as having vacated his place, and a successor may be elected to fill the same. Section 3. And be it further enacted that the business of the corporation shall be managed and directed by the Board of Trustees, who shall elect from their number a president and 2 vice presidents, and may appoint such other officers as they may see fit. 9 of the trustees, of whom the president or one of the vice presidents shall be one, shall form a quorum for the transaction of business at any regular or adjourned meeting of the Board of Trustees, and the affirmative vote of at least 7 members of the board shall be requisite in making any order for or authorizing the investment of any moneys or the sale or transfer of any stock or securities belonging to the corporation or the appointment of any officer receiving any salary therefrom. Section 4. And be it further enacted that the Board of Trustees of the corporation shall have power from time to time to make and establish such bylaws and regulations as they shall judge proper with regard to the elections of officers and the respective functions, and generally for the management of the affairs of the corporation, provided such bylaws and regulations are not repugnant to this act or to the Constitution or laws of the United States. Section 5. And be it further enacted that the general business and object of the corporation hereby created shall be to receive on such sums, to receive on deposit such sums of money as may be from time to time be offered therefore by on behalf of persons hereto held in slavery, 5, in the United States, or therefore descendants, and investing the same in the stocks, bonds, treasury notes, or other securities of the United States. Wow, that's deep. So they literally said, here to heretofore held in slavery in the United States, or their descendants. Boom, it's right there. So when we talk about the Freedmen's Bank, and especially about Yellen and all of them from the Treasury Department trying to usurp it and add all these other peoples, at least the original charter was very clear. Even though they screwed our money over because it was controlled by these white supremacists, it was very clear who the bank was for. Freedmen. Section 6. And be it further enacted that it shall be the duty of the trustees of the corporations to invest as soon as practicable in the securities named in the next preceding section, all sums received by them beyond an available fund not exceeding 1/3 of the total amount of deposits with the corporation, at the discretion of the trustees, which available funds may be kept by the trustees to meet current payments of the corporations, and may by them be left on deposit at interest or otherwise, or in such available form as the trustees may direct. So that's a finesse section right there. Section 7. And be it further enacted that the corporation may, under such regulations as the Board of Trustees shall from time to time prescribe, receive any deposit hereby authorized to be received upon such trust and for such purposes, not contrary to the laws of the United States, as may be indicated in writing by the depositor, such writing to be subscribed by the depositor and acknowledged or proved before any officer in the civil or military service of the United States. The certificate of which acknowledgement or proof shall be endorsed on the writing, and the writing so acknowledged or proved shall accompany such deposit and be filed among the papers of the corporation, and be carefully preserved therein, and may be read in evidence in any court before any judicial officer of the United States, without further proof, and the certificate of acknowledgement or proof shall be prima facie evidence only of the due execution of such writing. Section 8. And be it further enacted that all sums received on deposits shall be repaid to such depositor when required at such time, with such interest not exceeding 7% per annum, and under such regulations as the Board of Trustees shall from time to time prescribe, which regulations shall be posted up in some conspicuous place in the room where the business of the corporation shall be transacted, but shall not be altered so as to affect any deposit previously made. Section 9. And be it further enacted that all trusts upon which and all purposes for which any deposit shall be made, and which shall be indicated in the writing to accompany such deposit, shall be faithfully performed by the corporation, unless the performing of the same is rendered impossible. Section 10. And be it further enacted that when any depositor shall die, the funds remaining on deposit with the corporation to his credit, and all accumulations therefore, shall belong and be paid to the personal representatives of such depositor, in case he shall have left a last will and testament, and in default of a last will and testament, or in any person qualifying under a last will and testament, competent to act as executor, the corporation shall be entitled, in respect to the funds so remaining on deposit, to the credit of any such depositor, to administration thereon, in preference to all other persons, and letters of administration shall be granted to the corporation accordingly in the manner prescribed by law, in respect to granting of letters of administration with the will annexed, and in cases of intestacy. So that sounds like basically, they have some way of giving your funds to, a person in your will and testament if you pass, but they basically say if you don't name someone, we can keep your money, basically. Um, Section 11. And be it further enacted that in the case of the death of any depositors, whose deposits shall not be held upon any trust created pursuant to the provisions herein before contained, or where it may prove impossible to execute such trust, it shall be the duty of the corporations to make diligent efforts to ascertain and discover whether such deceased depositor has left a husband, wife, or children surviving, and the corporation shall keep a record of the efforts so made, and of the efforts and of the results thereof. And in case no person lawfully entitled thereto shall be discovered, or shall appear, or claim the funds remaining to the credit of such depositor before the expiration of 2 years from the death of such depositor, it shall be lawful for the corporation to hold and invest such funds as a separate trust fund, to be applied with the accumulations therefore to the education and improvement of such persons therefore held in slavery, or their descendants, being inhabitants of the United States, in such manner and through such agencies as boards of trustees shall deem best calculated to effect the object, provided that if any depositor be not heard from within 5 years from the date of his last deposit, the trustees shall advertise the same in some paper or of general circulation in the state where the principal office of the company is established, and also in the Senate where the depositor, in the state where the depositor was last heard from. And if within 2 years thereafter such depositor shall not appear, nor a husband, wife, or child of such depositor to claim his deposit, they shall be used by the Board of Trustees as herebefore provided for in this section. So, I mean, they did try to save themselves here. So they did mention, it sounds interesting. They said basically there will be a separate trust fund to be applied to the education and improvement of persons heretofore held in slavery or their descendants. So there sounds like partially they were trying to say if someone died and no one claimed it through a will or a trust, that they would put all this money aside into a separate fund that would go to our improvement as freedmen as a whole. But obviously that didn't happen. But I mean, at least we know what was there. Section 12. And be it further enacted that no president, vice president, trustee, officer, or servant of the corporation shall directly or indirectly borrow the funds of the corporation or its deposits, or in any manner use the same or any part therefor, except to pay necessary expenses under the direction of the Board of Trustees. All certificates or other evidence of deposit made by the proper officers shall be as binding on the corporation as if they were made under their common seal. It shall be the duty of the trustees to regulate the rate of interest allowed to the depositors, so that they shall receive as nearly as may be a rateable portion of all of the profits of such corporation after deducting all necessary expenses, provided, however, that the trustees may allow to depositors to the amount of $500 or upwards 1% less than the amount allowed others, and provided also whenever it shall appear that after the payment of the usual interest to depositors, and there is in the possession of the corporation an excess of profits over the liabilities amounting to 10% upon the deposit, such excess shall be invested for the security of the depositors in the corporation. Thereafter, at each annual examination of the affairs of the corporation, any surplus over and above such 10% shall, excuse me, in addition to the usual interest, be divided ratably among the depositors in such manner as the Board of Trustees shall direct. Section 13. And be it further enacted that whenever any deposit shall be made by any minor, the trustees of the corporation may, at their discretion, pay to such depositor such sums as may be due to him, although no guardian shall have been appointed for such minor, or the guardian of such minor shall not have authorized the drawing of the same, and the check, receipt, or acquaintance of such minor shall be as valid as if the same were executed by a guardian of such minor, or the minor were of full age, if such deposit was made personally by such minor. And whenever any deposit shall have been made by married women, the trustees may repay the same on their own receipts. Okay? That's somewhat progressive. Section 14. And be it further enacted, the trustees shall not directly or indirectly receive any payment or emolument for their services as such, except the president and vice president. 15. And be it further enacted that the president and vice president and subordinate officers and agents of the corporation shall respectively give such security for their fidelity and good conduct as the Board of Trustees may from time to time require, and the board shall fix the salaries of such officers and agents. Section 16, last section. And be it further enacted that the books of the corporation shall at all times during the hours of business be open for inspection and examination to such persons as Congress shall have uh, as Congress shall designate or appoint. Approved March 3rd, 1865. Like I said, same day that the Freedmen's Bureau Act was signed. Okay, so those are the three acts. That's the Freedmen's Bureau Act, that's the Freedmen's Bank Act, and Special Field Order 15. So now we can open it up to conversation, comments, questions, all that good stuff. I'm gonna invite more people up to speak. How you doing, Black Majority? How you doing, Lloyd, Kelly, Amaru, CJ, Queen B, King PJ, Sebastian, got Savage, Locksmith, Freeman Angel, BG Papa, Quiet Storm, and Boss Hog. All right, y'all. Let's get into some conversation. What are y'all thoughts about this? We just read through three foundational documents in terms of trying to write things during Reconstruction. All of these were put into law in 1865. So, what are your thoughts? Let's go to talent, then we'll go to Freedmen, justice, equality.
Peace to the room. Thanks for reading that out because I've definitely had my issues with uh, more conjecture than actually just reading out exactly what the paperwork said. And I kind of want to find a way to maybe in the room we can kind of clarify the difference between natural law and legal status under the law, especially during wartime, because one of the things that stuck out to me was these were provisions that were made during times of war. And I know when we are dealing with politics under war, there are certain authorities that are existing that impede upon or more so extend towards an international humanitarian rights. So when you were reading, I kind of went back and started to look at what that kind of looks like, you know, from a humanitarian, from seeing us as human beings, and not so much on the civil legal status. And the reason why I say that is because as much as this sounds great, there's never really been a full explanation as to why it kind of just dissolved and went away. And also being the fact that this was established during a time when there was a war, you know, because even during the Civil War after 1865, there still was contention and an issue with the South. You know, it's never been a full treaty between the North and the South that has ended that Civil War. So it's one of those things where I'm trying to figure out from a federal legislation, from an international human rights area, what happened as to why those things dissolved and those protections went away if there was never truly a peace treaty between the North and the South, and it seemed more of a political voting situation that kind of just had this thing go away. And after it went away, what happened when it came to our natural protections as prisoners of war or as ex-slaves, you know, under the color of law in between 1872 and like 1900 before we could actually even list ourselves as Negro in the census. So that's kind of where I hope I can get some answers at, because that would help me be a bit more comfortable with the freedman status if it's associated with our natural law and not legal status that can only exist if a government body is there to protect it.
Yeah, thank you for all those comments and questions, Talent. So to address kind of the overall point in terms of these acts, one thing that's important is these were done before the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which came later in the year, right? Now, one of the things that's interesting is when you combine these kind of like Reconstruction acts, so to speak, you do get a solid framework, which became what Reconstruction was. Now, this was pushed until basically the Freedmen's Bureau was undone in 1872. Now, if you actually we read through the Freedmen's Bureau, and actually one of the things that it says is to continue during the present war of rebellion and for 1 year thereafter, right? So even that's kind of an embedded time limit, right? So that's something, you know, we got to make sure that is corrected in the future. It should be an indefinite institution, just like the Bureau of Indian Education and Bureau of Indian Affairs, for example. Now, the Freedmen Bank was looted in 1874, and that was because all these poorly educated, oh, I don't want to say poorly educated, but in terms of they had poor financial decisions. All these white people invested into overbuilding railroads and all this other dumb stuff, and they basically crashed the stock market in 1873. And so all the trustees of the bank that we kind of like looked at, all of those people basically used the money. It was $57 million saved up in 1874 in the Freedmen Bank. 100,000 of our ancestors had saved that up, and they basically used that money to invest in all these speculative assets like they weren't supposed to. Reading through the legislation, but that the 1873 market crash basically led to the looting because they were financially irresponsible. That they decided to um, pay any other debts that they had with the money from the Freedmen's Bank and basically robbed us blind. Um, and so all that money we saved up, which is equivalent to $1.3 trillion today, was stolen. Um, Now in 1877, that's when you get the official end of Reconstruction, which talks about the removal of the troops from the South that were protecting us as prescribed in legislation, both in Special Field Order 15 and the Freedmen's Bureau Act. And basically, you had a contentious election where um, you had two presidents, from one from the Democrats, one from the Republicans. The Republicans wanted theirs seated, but the Democrats uh, were threatening another civil war. And um, as a compromise, um, they sat down. The Republicans and the Democrats sat down at a table, had an entire commission, right, that decided that they were going to remove the troops from the South, basically officially ending Reconstruction. Because at this point, the Freedmen's Bureau was already dead in 1872. 1874, the Freedmen Bank is dead. So by 1877, when this is happening, most of the institutions established for us are dead. The 40 acres have been reversed. And so at this point, they're like the only thing stopping us from continuing our white supremacist attitudes is these Union troops protecting the freedmen. And so, with this contentious election of 1876 and 1877, they decided that they were going to remove the troops if they were allowed to. The Republicans were allowed to seat their president. So that was the official end of Reconstruction. That led to the Black Codes, Jim Crow, more genocide, etc. Um, and I don't know if you saw a previous space, but we talked about the status of freedmen. Um, Basically, you have three types of citizenship. You have freedmen, natives, and immigrants. And they're each, everybody, we already know who the natives are. Everyone who came over here, even if they came here on the Mayflower, are immigrants. We are the only freedmen, right? And so that's a status that is specific and is like kind of permanent. It's not something you can change. If you had at least one ancestor that was a freedman, you're a freedman, right? Um, and so obviously you could be mixed in things, but if you have one ancestor that was a freedman, you're a freedman. So that's the important distinction. And it's important that even in these legislation, even reading through the Freedmen's Bureau Act, it was amazing to see how many times they mentioned slavery and their descendants. You know what I mean? They said uh, Section 5, they say slavery or their descendants. They mention it again later down. The point is, they understood who freedmen were even when they were establishing the bank. So, whether it be the bank, the Freedmen's Bureau, or Special Field Order 15, um, they recognized the status of freedmen. And even in the Juneteenth proclamation, the Juneteenth proclamation that freed the last of the slaves in Texas, Galveston, Texas, freedman was used there. So it's a status that has legislative uh, weight and significance in terms of citizenship. Let me go to Freedman, Justice, Equality, and then we'll go to Lloyd.
Peace to the room. Peace to the Freedmen Party. The host, peace to the Freedmen. And peace to the Freedmen family. I think this is the most greatest space that's out right now in the Twitter world. Salute. This is very powerful, and this place will be packed with nothing but the American freedmen. So I joined a little late, so pardon me. I missed a lot of the Freedmen Bureau Acts and the bank laws and things like that. So I guess I'm gonna have to ask, what is your favorite one? Can you give me one favorite bank law for the freedmen and one from you, Freedmen Party, and one favorite Freedmen Bureau or Freedmen Bureau Acts from you, free one.
Yeah. So check this out.
Favorite. It gotta be the best.
So check this out. I actually updated our party website with some information from the Freedmen's Bureau and the um, Special Field Order 15. So here are the quotes. I'm pulling it up on the screen. These are my two favorite quotes from one's from Special Field Order 15, the other's from the Freedmen's Bureau Act. So this one's from the Special Field Order 15. Each family shall have a plot of not more than 40 acres of tillable ground, and the military authorities will afford them protection until such time as they can protect themselves. And then my favorite quote from the Freedmen's Bureau Act is, Freedmen shall be assigned not more than 40 acres, and the person to whom it was so assigned shall be protected in the use and enjoyment of the land. Boom. So those are my two favorite. From the Freedmen's Bank Act, let me see. I did like the thank you. I did like the part about how they were going to handle the money if in case of death. I thought that was pretty cool. But in terms of their actually following through on that, they didn't do that at all. So I'll say kind of the thought of instead of them just pocketing the money, they had this like education initiative. Let me pull up the quote. It says, it shall be lawful for the corporation to hold and invest such funds as a separate trust fund to be applied with the accumulations therefore or thereof to the education and improvement of persons herefore held in slavery or their descendants being inhabitants of the United States. So, I mean, that's probably one of my favorites from the Freedmen's Bank.
I like all of those.
Yeah, I think it's super important we remember that this was very clear and it was mentioned more than once, especially the 40 acres. It's not like it's just because I know we always talk about Special Field Order 15, but it's also mentioned in Freedmen's Bureau. So it's like you can't get away from it. It's not like just a one-off thing.
It was legislated as well.
Right, by an act of Congress. So so the Special Field Order 15 was like an executive order essentially, but the Freedmen Bureau Act that included the 40 acres was an act of Congress. So yeah, you can't get past that. Let's go to Lloyd and Lloyd Kelly. What's up, Lloyd Kelly? Lloyd Kelly was the manager for Marcel's campaign.
Okay, hey everybody. Let's clarify that. I was not the campaign manager. Oz was the campaign manager. I was just policy director.
Okay, policy director. Sorry.
Okay, so I was very involved with creating the reparations plans that the campaign put out. Here's my thought. After listening to this, I think that I agree with the first person that spoke that said this is amazing because now we actually know what the law says. It's not what I think it says. It's not how I feel about it. It's what the law, everybody listening actually knows what the laws say. Because one of the misnomers has always been that the 40 acres and a mule was never codified. It was a field order, and it was executive order. Well, now we know Congress said, no, give them 40 acres and the mule, right? So no one can tell you again that it was never made the law, because now you know where to go look to show them this is what it says. That being said, I think it is extremely important that we not just know the information, but we know how to use the information going forward. So history only helps us if we know how to use it. Meaning, we don't let what happened before. When the new Freedmen's Bureau is created for reparations, we watch out for all the things they did back in 1874. We're not letting them do that in 2022. And I think that I think that, a lot of, we've learned a lot today in terms of how to conduct spaces going forward when we have these kinds of conversations. Before anybody's allowed to talk, we see what the actual law or rules say. And I'll land right there for right now.
Thank you for that, Lloyd. Really appreciate that feedback. Yeah, I think it's super important because, like you said, yeah, it's almost like the 40 acres and a mule was like this mythical thing to so many people, right? And so to me, it's kind of cool that we, like you said, can actually see what it actually said, prove that we're not crazy, we're not just making this up. It's actually here in writing, um, and uh, even when I'm going through these links, I'm trying to as much as possible using .govs. So the Freedmen Bank came from the Library of Congress. Um, there are records from the Freedmen's Bureau, but I pulled up UMD, which is a university to read from, but it's the same thing. Point is, this is real. We still have these legislations around, and what we can do going forward is essentially, like you said, remove any parts that would like have another end of reconstruction, right? We want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So I think we have the blueprint. Now we got to do upgrade it for the 21st century and make the improvements that are necessary.
Absolutely. And I think that it's important if you would make sure that News Coder gets all of those links and ask him, back channel, ask him to make sure that that stuff gets posted on all of his platforms.
Oh, I agree 100%. Totally. I'll definitely hit him up with those links. I'll try to put some of those links in the Jumbotron too if anybody wants to copy as well. Let's go to Freedone, then Freedman Angel.
Yeah, so I was reading the Freedmen Bank Act. Okay, and so on section 2, first part it lists all the trustees and boards and whatnot. Then section 2 is saying that those guys should be who's gonna be liable for the bank. So now my question is there any way that we can look for their descendants and see if they have any connection to what's going on, or how we can either hold them accountable or something? I don't know.
That's a great idea. We have their names, so that's totally possible. If they have any living descendants, there's potential they could be prosecuted. Um, I pulled up. I also added the definition of reparations um, to the Freedmen Party website on the policy page, um, and it says restitution includes, as appropriate, restoration of liberty, enjoyment of human rights, identity, family life, and citizenship, return to one's place of residence, restoration of employment, and return of property. And there's no statute of limitations on that. And then under compensation, it has lost opportunities, including employment, education, social benefits, material damages, and loss of earnings, including loss of earning potential, moral damage, physical and mental harm, for example. So all of these things in terms of reparations can be adjudicated. So if they have any living descendants, it's completely possible. So that's a great idea. So yeah, we should definitely look into that. Like, do a family tree of all those names. See who's still around.
Yeah, just at least see where the descendants ended up at versus where our descendants are at.
Exactly. I could predict. Obviously there's going to be some of them that are still around, and I would imagine they're probably like behind some like J.P. Morgan or something. You know what I mean? They're going to be like some financial institution today or something, or some like railroad company or something like that. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
They actually ended up poor. I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, some of them probably. They messed up the money in 1874. They had to like steal our money because they couldn't make good investments. So I mean, yeah, it just shows you how poorly they are at financial management. Let's go to Freedman Angel, then we'll go back to Freedman Justice Equality, then Lloyd. Sav, did you want to say anything too? I'm going to give you a chance. I didn't see your hand, but I could go to you too.
So I don't know too much on the subject. Definitely.
Okay, we'll do Freedman Angel, then we'll come to you next, and then we'll go to Freedman Justice Equality and Lloyd.
Good evening, everyone. Peace and reparations.
Yeah, that was very important. That aspect that you talked about when you said there's no statute of limitations. That's probably the most important part of it, because that would be the first thing that they would claim to try to go after assets of people's descendants. To me, just overall, my overall thoughts about this is it's always been there. And the reason why this has never been put forward or prosecuted is because we just have never really had any representation, from back in, 1876, when Reconstruction ended to now. We just have never had that. I was in a space maybe a couple of months ago when these phone spaces where people were arguing about what status we should have, why we should be, consider ourselves freedmen. When I was trying to explain that it's already been codified, all the laws, all the status is basically already there by acts of Congress. And it's almost like a lot of people didn't even believe it because they said, well, if this has already been there, why haven't we always adopted this status? Because, a lot of the information has been hidden. Like I said, it's never been advocated. People just want to forget about it. But now you see all these people now, recognizing the power of the freedmen that are trying to advocate Maxine Waters, a freedman, the descendants of those freedmen that were enslaved by Native American. And we see now they're trying to advocate for this new Freedmen Bank that they're going to take the money, give it to all these immigrants and people that have nothing to do with the original freedmen. You see Clarence Thomas represent, talking about the rights of freedmen in his gun control decision in the Supreme Court. So it's always been there. The power has always been there. We just need to, take it forward now and just start prosecuting all of this. And with that, I'll lay my plane.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. 2 points on that. Firstly, they mention in the Freedmen's Bank Act that is for specifically people who were formerly enslaved and their descendants. It doesn't mention anybody else. It's only for us, right? So that's very clear. So the whole you trying to hijack the Freedmen Bank thing, not only can we stop, should we stop it because we know it's wrong, but we can also look at the legislation and prove that is wrong from the get go, you know? And then the second part, one of the things that's fascinating in terms of like numbers and everything, in terms of the Freedmen, I'll pull up the Freedmen numbers really quickly. Go to Freedmen Reconstruction if you want to follow through on the screen. So in terms of numbers, right, 4 million, about 4 million freedmen were emancipated in 1866, or sorry, 65. That was American freedmen, primarily, uh, most of us in this room are 80%, you know what I mean, in terms of percentages. Now, there were 7,500 freedmen emancipated from the five tribes in 1866. And um, when that happened, there was 2,500 Cherokee freedmen freed, 2,300 Choctaw freedmen, 1,500 Creek freedmen, about 1,000 Chickasaw freedmen, and about 300 Seminole freedmen. Now, the interesting thing, despite American freedmen being like 4 million and then like tribal freedmen being like 7,500, they retained their memory of the freedman status far longer than us. So we basically started to lose ours after 1877. Like it just started fading from memory, and it wasn't passed on, and these things like that. Now, if you look at freedmen from the five tribes, not only did they have freedmen on their on their ID cards, but all of them were basically kicked out of the five tribes in 1879. So that was like the first time they had to like their Reconstruction ended type of thing, So like most of them still remember who they are and still remember the freedman status. There's the Choctaw and Cherokee Freedmen Twitter page, like you mentioned that Senate hearing with the freedmen from the five tribes. like Maxine Waters, like you mentioned, she was just like, yeah, Freedmen this, Freedmen that, like we need to do this for Freedmen, you know? And so it was just kind of super ironic, right? You know, so like they ignore American freedmen, but they know definitely who tribal freedmen are. So the fact that that they had a much smaller number, but they retained that freedmen number or knowledge, whereas we had a far greater number in terms of American freedmen, but lost that freedmen knowledge is certainly interesting, and it's definitely not an accident. It was purposeful, and it was intentional in a way to remove our ability to access the services and benefits that were required by the legislation with the name Freedmen in it, you know? So definitely, I think that was great points, Freedman Angel. Let's go to Sav, and then we'll go to Talent and Freedman, Justice Equality, then Lloyd.
Hey everyone. So like I said, I didn't know anything about this, right? Never learned about it. Never was a topic of discussion in school. Obviously, rightfully so. But just listening to what everyone's saying, like there's written legislative proof in history, purposefully sewed and worded carefully too, to make sure that it was always there, right? And when you look at the wealth gap, let alone the racial wealth gap, we need this now more so than ever. And it's funny when you look at, our quote unquote Black Caucus. What did they do? Like, this is what they were created for, and they're not doing their job. And when they push for things like abortion and things that don't necessarily align with the Black community, like the LGBT, immigration, it's a clear it's just a mockery, right? And so it's like we have to do a better job of educating one another, and really making sure we putting in the word in people's ears that we have proof out there, right? And we're not just talking. So thank you for sharing.
Of course. Thanks again for coming and sharing your thoughts, Sav. Really appreciate you, your contributions. Yeah, I think it's super important that we know this stuff and we see it and read it with our own eyes and know what the truth is and can pass it on. Definitely. Let's go to Talent, then Freedman, and then Lloyd.
Yeah, peace again. What I was thinking about when you kind of went over a couple of pieces that some people spoke is the protected class status that this brought, or the element that it had, and it recognized us as a nation, which we actually are, and that is a federal, international, we within ourselves are like our own 5 civilized tribes, and that was a provision that was created there. And I'm just like at a loss for words to see how murky it gets or how blurry it gets when it comes to this 1876 election. I looked into South Carolina, 500 Black people murdered. I'm like, well, what in the hell was happening where all of a sudden this just disappears? And where was the international oversight that was supposed to have come in from the global powers of the world to say, hey, hold up. Because immediately after that, we're dealing with the color of law. We're dealing with everything of not being seen and even being able to establish ourselves as humans. When you even look at our ability to classify ourselves on these census documents, a lot about what's happening with the California reparations. I did some homework. You couldn't put Negro in the census until the 1900s. So if we don't have a freedman status as a nation of people that's protected by international law on a global level as a nation of people, then we were kind of left to the wolves in between this time frame. As you can see, all the things that happened. So, my goal and hope within all of this is how can we create the necessary claims and charge the federal government with abandoning a nation of people to be left to the KKK that happens in 1865. And now we getting into all these race riots and all these weird things. And the nigga is like, wait, hold up, what's going on? So that's kind of where I've had my hesitation, with embracing the freedman status, because I didn't like how it just seemed as though the government just kind of turned a blind eye. And it was just like, y'all Negroes is left to yourselves. Y'all got to figure that out. And it's like, well, we've already been established as a nation. What the hell is going on here? And why do we now have to vote about this?
Yeah, it's super important. I would just kind of summarize it by white backlash, right? It was we had these things established, and then the same arguments that white people are using today. Well, because here's the dope thing: the Confederates couldn't vote, and Freedmen could, and those white people were so angry. There was like Negro rule, like we can't have this. Like, how is this possible? It was like, well, you betrayed the country and these people helped free themselves and keep the country and the union together. So they were so mad that they used all of that anger to basically stuff ballots. You had things like the Wilmington Massacre, where they overthrew an entire government. You know what I mean? You had ballot stuffing. You had intimidation at the ballot. People with guns. There were stories when I was going through, I couldn't believe. Like, they would talk about how Freedmen would like uh, on before the day of the election, they would hide and sleep in the like forest and like in the grasses in the forest, and basically come out when no one else was near the polls, so they could vote safely, because these white people were trying to use violence and intimidation. So the level of kind of just atrocities that were happening to fight back the political power that was gained. Because during Reconstruction, we voted at an 80% rate turnout, in terms of 80% of us turned out to vote. And then we had 2,000 freedmen in elected office, senators and House representatives included. So it's something where that level of achievement was something they couldn't uh, deal with. I wanted to pull up the meeting with the special meeting before Special Field Order 15 was even brought into being. Let me see if I can find it. It's like Garrison, Frazier, and Sherman. Let me see if I can pull it up really quickly. But one of the parts in it that's super important is they talk about. He asked him, "What do you want?" Okay, here it goes. I'm about to put it on the screen so y'all can see it. Stop screen, share screen. Okay, so meeting. Okay, so Sherman met with like 20 freedmen, right? And asked them, "What do we want?" Right? And he asked us. He says, "State in what manner you would rather live, whether scattered among the whites or in colonies by yourselves." Now check this out. Garrison Frazier was elected to speak for most of them, by all the other 20 that were there. He said, "I would prefer to live by ourselves, for there is a prejudice against us in the South that will take years to get over. But I do not know that I can answer for my brethren. Mr. Lynch says he thinks that they should not be separated, but live together. All the other persons present, being questioned one by one, answered that they agree with Brother Frazier." So 19 out of 20 people, 95% wanted our own colonies, which is when we go back to the Special Field Order 15, it literally says no white person, whatever, should be able to come to our land. So I'm like, dang, that was real specific. You know what I mean? Like, they basically would have to be part of the military, and to be there to temporarily train us so we could take over. So it's super important that we go back and look at this and look at where we are today, 150 plus years later. Um, where are we now? We're scattered amongst the whites. We don't have our own colonies, and we're basically going against what they thought would happen, which is there'll still be a prejudice against us that's will take years to get over. And what have we been going through? All of that prejudice that still hasn't been gotten over. So, I mean, Frazier was right. And one of the dope facts that I learned about Garrison Frazier, actually, it's actually mentioned in here. Garrison, um, I'll read it directly. Oops. It's basically a story about how he bought his freedom. Okay. Garrison Frazier, age 67, born in Granville County, North Carolina, slave until 8 years ago, when he bought himself and wife, paying $1,000 in gold and silver, is an ordained minister in the Baptist Church, but his health failing has no charge of has char wait what his health failing has now charge of no congregation. Has been in the ministry 35 years. Basically, I did the math on $1,000 in when he bought his freedom. That would be the equivalent of $70 million today, which means he bought his freedom for $35 million and his wife's freedom for $35 million. That's pretty impressive. So for Garrison Frazier to also be like a minister and then say like, "Hey, we want our colonies and our land." Oh, because he asked him, "How do you think you can best take care of yourself?" Let me see if I can find that. Take care of. Okay. He said, uh, let's see, take care of ourselves. Okay, so it says, reap the fruit of our own labor, take care of ourselves. Wait, where's the land part? Okay, state in what manner you think you can take care of yourselves and how can you best assist the government in maintaining your freedom. The way we can best take care of ourselves is to have land and turn it and till it by our own labor, that is, by the labor of the women and children and old men, and when we can soon maintain ourselves and have something to spare. And to assist the government, the young men should enlist in the service of the government and serve in such manner as they may be wanted. So basically, he understood we need our own land. We need to be able to, create our own products and our own um, services, and basically do it until we have our own money, so we can live by ourselves and build our own communities how we desire. Um, but yeah, let's go to Freedman and then Lloyd.
Once again, salute, salute, salute. This is the best space on Twitter space right now because we are talking about American freedmen, freedmen business, and freedmen politics right now. So the special field order was essentially a military order or an executive order. So there's precedence for Jim Crow Joe Biden to set, excuse me, to set create an executive order for the American Freedmen reparations today. So now with this space right here, we have shown and proven that there's also precedence for the legislative order, legislation with the acts that you read out continuously today to set American freedmen reparations on a national level right here. But today and today, it will be to eliminate the lineage, generational wealth, Grand Canyon between the American freedmen family household and the European family households. So is there a way where we could just pull up to Congress, show these Freedmen Bureau Acts and Freedmen Bank Acts and all of this proof and just shove it in Nancy Pelosi's face, shove it in Chuck Schumer's face, and just shove it down their throats and say, here, no more stalling. We got the proof. This is the precedence of the American history and the American freedmen history. Is there a way we can do that? Because at this point, American freedmen reparations should be guaranteed, yes?
Yes, there's a way to do it, and the way to do it is twofold. First, we get the old legislation, we update it for the 21st century. Remove some of the sexist language. Remove anything that's not relevant. Move the trigonometry in terms of the all white trustees. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Then the way to get bills passed is you introduce those to members of Congress. There's 100 people in the Senate that can introduce bills, 435 people in the House that can introduce bills. All we need is one of them to introduce the bill. So that's 535 chances. So we have the old bill, we show them the new bill. Here's the precedents. Here's what we need for the 21st century. Now we got to find a sponsor for it. And then you mentioned the executive order. We can also bring it to the president or the vice president and say, hey, here's what we want to do. Here's the bill. You don't have any excuse. It's not like you got to write it yourself. Here it is. We basically got to give them no excuse. We can't give them any wiggle room to be like, oh, well, I don't know what that means. No, here's the bill, and then here's the updated version. Here you go.
Do we
Sign
have
it.
a bill like that right now where we can just, what it's updated?
The
There's
closest,
no study or anything. Not the HR 40. We know
Yeah,
that shit
yeah.
is trash.
So the
HR
closest,
1865.
yeah,
Do you think that
1865.
qualifies?
Yeah. So we added on our site under the reparations under legislation. If you click example, it takes you to HR 1865, and that's the closest thing. It has lineage base, as Dr. Darity edits, is made by NAASD and like CJAC. So it's like really good work. Now the other things that are important to this that may not be necessarily included in this, and I understand when you mean study. Like I like what Marcel said. Marcel said, anything that we already know, like the cost of reparations that have already been calculated, like the 1.3 trillion for the Freedmen Bank, the 16 trillion for the 40 acres, 230 trillion for the 4 million ancestors. Like those calculations, he's like, pay the reparations that you already know, and if you need to do more study, that needs to be time limited to find out any more information. But everything you know right now, you should be able to give, and I agree with that 100%. So the 250 trillion would be about 6 million per freedman, based on pre 1900s all freedmen. Like 1865, the 40 acres, that was 400 million in 1865. Now it's worth 6 trillion. Uh, in 1860, our 4 million ancestors were valued at $4 billion. That's 230 trillion today. And 57 million stolen from the Freedmen Bank is worth 1.3 trillion today. So all of these numbers are well known. They're all pre 1900s. So there's no excuse. They were specifically done for freedmen. So we have this as a clear bill that needs to be paid. And then if they want to study other things on top of this, then that just gets added later on a time limit, right?
One last question. I guess the good question would be, who is that one out of the 535 who would be willing to promote this and introduce this bill? You said we just need one, but we also going to need at least 2/3 of that. So what's that, 535? I don't know. But
Yeah, so
out of 535, we're going to need people to vote yes so that we can legislate it on a national level.
So two great questions. So I answered the first one earlier today because I was actually writing down the numbers. So in the House, we need 218 out of 435, and then in the Senate, 51 out of 100, right, to pass a bill. So in terms of introducing, obviously we need one, and I think that one person is one that we raise from the grassroots, like a Marcel, like a Tamara, like a Reverend Somerville, for example, like the people in this room. I think we all need to go through the boot camp that we developed and basically go through and run for office on the local, state, and federal level. That we will be the people that introduce these bills.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, getting Marcel in, for example, he could introduce the bill, right? So it's things like that where we just got to understand that we can't, although we want to lobby and ask for the kindness of strangers, it's better that we have family that we can go to, walk into their office, and they have political power. Just like white people do all the time. You know what I mean? They call up their friend who's a senator. They call up their friend who's a House of Representatives. So all of these are something we have to understand. We have the political power. We are the second highest voting turnout of any race in America behind white people. We had the highest turnout during Reconstruction and during 2008 and 2012, even though we got finessed by Obama, who's not a freedman, right? But it's not about getting Obama elected. It's about the turnout. That means we can get anyone we want elected. That's the insight. And so that's what we have to understand. Voting is powerful. Our voting block is worth $3 billion. 32 million of us are eligible to vote out of the 42 million of us that are freedmen. And if you look at Michael Bloomberg, who I use as an example, he spent $1 billion and lost in the primary. So if our voting block is worth $3 billion, we have leverage to get what we want. People are spending billions of dollars and losing in the primary. We have to understand how valuable our vote is. There's 12 million of us that are freemen that are non-voting, basically. 10 million of us aren't registered. And that's about the same size as the amount of people who are Democrats right now. So if the non-voters and the independents come together, they can silence both the Democrats and Republicans combined.
What's the name of your website? Because I've been trying to
Freedmen, Freedmen.party. It's in our profile too. Just Freedmen.party. Yeah, it's in our Twitter bio too. Link in bio, as they say on the IG. Let's see. Lloyd, I think you were next up, and then we'll go to Black and then Marcus.
Okay, there is so much to unpack here, but what I want to start with is saying this. Somebody said that we should pull all this information together and take it to Nancy and put it in her face and say, see, here's the problem with that. Nancy already knows. Mm-hmm. They know they don't do anything without intentionally doing it. See, our people, freedmen, and our lineage, we are fair and honest, and all we want to do is to be treated fairly. And we play the game like they're going to treat us fairly. They're not. So here's the thing. Part of a job of a policy director is not to just come up with really good policy. It's to come up with efficient and effective ways to get that policy implemented. Right? So somebody else asked, is there a law or something we could out there or whatever? I'm asking people, every time I get on space, I ask people, please go read the reparations plan that Marcel's campaign put out when he was running. The answer is there, every single thing. If you read it, you recognize it is bulletproof. Everything that we are talking about tonight in that plan addresses, right? And so then to get where we need to go, we have to start thinking strategically. To answer somebody's question, the reality is, had we been able to elect Marcel for 2 years, Marcel wasn't going to be able to do anything. Because Marcel would have been one vote in 435. You need 218 to get anything passed. And as long as they know that Marcel is there by himself, they'll let him sit there. They're not going to give him any good committee assignments, but they'll let him sit there. But they will render him ineffective. So the strategy has to be that for whatever it takes to get rid of the 55 members, 52 in the House, and 3 in the Senate, do nothing Congressional Black Caucus members. Because they're the members of Congress and the president are the only people that can make this happen. Because they are the ones that vote on it. You and I do not. That's why voting is so important, so that we send people that understand, we're electing you to take the plan that the Dixon campaign put out and put it into legislative language and put it in as a bill. And then the other 54 that we've elected are not going to allow anything to go through this Congress, including a budget, which means nobody's getting paid until we get what we're owed. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I agree with you 100%.
And I hope that, when we use the format of the space tonight, which is to read the stuff, that you want to read that reparations plan. Because I've heard a lot of numbers thrown out here, but we have to think strategically. If we set a number so high that the government can never pay it, then it's not going to happen. But the plan addresses that. It doesn't ask for $1 million for every person. It literally asks for like somewhere between 1.8 million and 2.4 million per freedman. And it's very clear that only freedmen are entitled. And it's not paid to. You would not get a check for $2.4 million. You would get a check. You would get a check every year for 6% of $2.4 million, which works out to about $180,000 a year times the 32 million that would be entitled. Now we don't have to ask them for land. Collectively, we just go and buy it. Because we have to stop asking them to make us whole and make ourselves whole. The only thing that we need from them is the money that we are owed, not for the atrocities of slavery, because how much do you pay somebody for beating their ass with a bullwhip, or raping their mother or grandmother, or castrating? How much does that cost? Can't quantify that. But what you can quantify means put a dollar value to, is the 40 million man-hours that freedmen contributed to this country every day for 256 years. Now, the other day I was talking to somebody about it. They had no idea what 40 million man-hours meant. So let me break that down really quick for those who may not understand. A man-hour is, let's say you and I work at the same place. You have a job at ABC Company, and you work 8 hours a day. And I come and start working right next to you at ABC Company. Well, we now have, the two of us are 16 man hours every day. And then the third person comes, well, that becomes 44 man hours a day. We were providing this country with 40 million, and that's a very conservative number, 40 million man hours per day for 256 consecutive years, unpaid. That's what they owe us the money for. All the other stuff is emotional, but we know that we were doing work, and that's based on a 10-hour workday when we know that slaves were working 16, 18 hours all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. One of the definitions in terms of the United Nations definitions of reparations, under compensation, they say compensation should be provided for any economically accessible damage as appropriate and proportional to the gravity of the violation and the circumstances of each case, resulting from gross violations of international human rights law and serious violations of international humanitarian law, such as A, physical or mental harm, B, lost opportunities, including employment, education, and social benefits, C, material damages and loss of earnings, including loss of earning potential, D, moral damage, and E, costs required for legal or expert assistance, medicine and medical services, and psychological and social services. So when we go back, also restitution includes restoration of employment and return of property. So anything even currently or in the past that results can be all calculated and added up. So we've calculated, like I mentioned, the whole Freedmen's Bank, the 40 acres, and the value that our 4 million ancestors were assessed at in 1860. So I definitely agree. It's important that we understand what we've gone through, understand what the calculations are, and so that we have clear numbers as well. So definitely, Lloyd. Okay, so next up, Black, and then Marcus, then Harriet, then we'll do FBA Vader, and then Freedman, Angel, and Talent.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you for the space. I've caught it somewhere in the middle. So I want to highlight something that you said reading from the text, but two things that I want to say are going to be controversial to people who may not have studied or unaware. The first thing is setting up a new Freedmen's Bank under the authority of the United States government, me, is a horrible idea. Whether it's some type of VA style administration or some other system by which they have control over that particular entity, is a recipe for disaster. In my personal opinion, the only way to do that would be a constitutional amendment, because that's the only law that they really, really, really adhere to. Every other law is made to be broken. Treaties are made to be broken. Administrations are made to be defunded and divested from in this country. I do not trust them to set up an organization or a branch of the government and fully fund that till the end. So that's the first thing that I want to say. The second part is, you said something that I think we really need to grab onto. Descendant of freedmen. Just like we are descendants of American slaves, we are descendants of American freedmen. But once we got citizenship in this country, as in every other country, is a higher status than slave or freedmen. We were not the freedmen.
Freedmen is a status of citizenship, actually. So, for example,
is a status beneath citizen in all
so
of these.
there's I mentioned this before. There's three types of citizens. There's native, immigrant, and freedman. And obviously, you can be mixed if you have mixed heritage. But if you're a freedman, if you have one answer, that was a freedman at least.
Okay. Yeah. So we're not just gonna disagree, but we're gonna go back and forth in DMs. I posted a long thread about Roman law. It actually was brought up in the case for Scott Dredd case, where they referenced Roman law. British law was built on Roman law. It goes back to Egyptian law. A freedman is a pseudo status in between slave and citizen, and the freedman, upon death in Roman times, returned to a slave. That was that is the way it works under their law, and American law is built on.
Okay, I'm sticking to modern law and U.S. history. So freedmen, you can look at even tribal freedmen. You can look at their ID cards. It says Seminole freedmen,
Yes.
and they're citizens, Let me finish. In 1979, they were kicked out of these 5 tribes, and they've been fighting to get their citizenship from the 5 tribes back. That does not take away their status or anything. And so understanding that these names are permanent, just like native, you can never remove the native from yourself if you have a native ancestor. The same way if you have an immigrant ancestor, you can't remove immigrant as a status. The same way if you have a freedman from your ancestors, you can't remove that from your status. But yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I do want to give other people time to speak. We could definitely talk about this back and forth in the DM. We have an entire page. Go to freedmen.party/policy and /freedmen, and it defines what it is. One last thing. There's a definition. There's a difference between race, nationality, and citizenship. That's why you can be called a Black American freedman, a Black American immigrant, or you can be a Black American, you could be a Black Choctaw freedman, for example, or a Black Creek freedman, for example. So understanding these things are super important. So I'll give you like 30 more seconds, then I'm going to go to Marcus, then Harriet, and then down the line.
Yeah, the reason that the Black American freedmen in these native tribes have been fighting for full citizenship is because their status is freedmen and not full citizen. That
is not true. That is not true at all. No, it is not. I'm not going to let you steal false information. It's in the 1866 treaty. If you even watch the native freedmen live stream that they did at the Senate hearing that we live streamed, you go back to that and hear actual Choctaw freedmen, Cherokee freedmen speaking on behalf to the Senate about their status. you can hear Cherokee people talking about all freedmen have equal rights as citizenship based on the 1866 treaty. So I'm not going to argue about facts, but we can talk about that in the background. Next is Marcus, then Harriet.
Jeez, peace and reparations to the room. It's a lot that's been said that I wanted to get to, so I don't even know where to start anymore. First, I give support to the Freedmen Party, to the Free When You a Fool for your profile banner. I just seen that. That's fucking hilarious. To Sam, appreciate you, all the work you're doing here in Ohio. To all the reparations in the room, appreciate you no matter where you stand. Where do we get? Oh, man. So, I don't even know y'all done said so much, I don't even know where I want to start. I guess one thing I'll say is, one, our people didn't trust those people. That's why they didn't let them on their land. I know you spoke about that earlier when you were talking about the laws of what they did, when we had our own sovereign land. So I think we should get back to that. If you talk to your big mama or whatever, they would have told you not to trust them people. And there was a reason for that. We need to get back to that. I think a lot of what happened in the 90s or post-civil rights, I would even say, when this unity and all this stuff was pushed, a lot of people's guard got let down and started trusting people that they should have never trusted. A lot of the things you spoke on historically, they go back to just one dehumanization of our people, of our lineage-based people. They were dehumanized. They were literally thought of as less than. So that created the second part, the jealousy, where they're now jealous of the things that we could achieve and do. So they constantly tore them down, broke them down, cheated us out of it, robbed us out of them, stole it. But no matter what they did, they were jealous of what we could achieve because they thought we were less than them. And so they took it from us. So for all those atrocities that happened up until this day, this very day, and I'll speak on stuff like Tamir Rice. Like, I've reparations for that. Like, that's the atrocity. Y'all killed a little boy that looked like my little boy across the street from where he lived. Like, that makes no sense to me. My son doesn't go to that park anymore. Like, that y'all gave him 1.2 seconds. And I live in a society where I got people that look like the people that shot him telling me it's okay to shoot a 12-year-old. The same people is going to go sit up here and tell you, well, you should support the NRA and the Second Amendment, and the NRA didn't stand up for Philando Castile. So, I mean, I forget to, there's a ton of things that's been said, but one of the things I want to say is, I just based on what we just said, I wish a lot of us would get past our differences as reparationists. Let's fight for this check based on lineage. I don't care what y'all call ourselves. I really don't. I do think it's important for legal status. Which gets into another thing I heard wasn't mentioned. I know you brought up two things, but the third route I would go, and I've been pushing people on, is getting these states through state reparations to possibly sue the federal government on behalf of freedmen, ADOS, FBA, the tribe, whatever term you want to use, because that would be the third way to get it done, would be to go through the Supreme Court and put together a legal case that they couldn't argue against. So, I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I just wish that people stop fighting over a lot of the BS. If you down here working on reparations, no matter where you at, you ain't gonna have time for a lot of this extra stuff. You're gonna miss it. You're gonna be like, oh, what happened? You're gonna have to catch up, And, y'all know what's been going on. I had to watch YouTube this morning. I wasn't in the spaces to know who was beefing with who, but I caught up on YouTube. But my point being is, like, can we get back to the work? Everybody, I mean, if we got beef, let's get in the DMs. We don't need to be in these spaces. Y'all know who's listening. Y'all know they recording these spaces for other folks just to use against us. There's people hopping in other people's spaces trying to use the beef from yesterday or before. Every time there's something going on, they're going to try to use that against us to fight against our cause. We all owe the check. If your family was here, if your family been here since they've been putting in the work that built this country, you owe the check. Let's go get that check. So I won't get into all the differences I had with everybody. I had a lot of things I wanted to get to, but I'm going to land there and peace and reparations to the room.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, bro. Yeah, Marcus is from Ohio. You got Tamir Rice. You also got Jalen Walker. Those are all acts of genocide. Breonna Taylor, acts of genocide. And there's a clear definition that the U.S. and the United Nations has for genocide. And the U.S. actually has a punishment for genocide. So if you kill someone, like Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Jalen Walker, as an act of genocide, the punishment by U.S. law, and I could pull it up actually, the punishment for death, if what you do results in killing someone, you have to have capital punishment or life imprisonment, depending on the state, and a fine of $1 million. So that's per act of genocide. You know what I mean? So all of these, at minimum, you know what I mean? These officers, people like the dude who went up in Tops, that's death penalty or life imprisonment with $1 million fine. So I think we need to go back and enforce these laws. I obviously think they need to be enhanced and amended, but at least where they are, they're not even being enforced. The same act could be used against Flint, Michigan, for example, what's going on with the water there. So all of these things need to be addressed. Harriet is up next, then FBA Vader. Then we'll go back to Amia because she hasn't got a chance to speak. And then I'll go back to Talent, Freedman, Angel, Lloyd, and Freedman.
Peace, power, and reparations, family. Hey, Freedmen Party, brother. Hey, you have all my respect. Please follow this brother, bringing all of this Freedmen knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Every time I go in his spaces, I don't see it filled how it needs to be. You know what I'm saying? And every time I step in his room, I'm going to start saying this. And with all this unnecessary drama going on, when the real work is going down, and people on this Freedmen knowledge, which is definitely the key and the way, because this is going to relinquish all of that red tape because race can't hold them in court. You know what I'm saying? The Freedmen Party is bringing the heat, and more of our people need to be in here. So I'm gonna lead with that. I also wanted to say again what I was in here saying yesterday. Due to what has happened to us here, we have had no political representation. I posted that tweet that I posted yesterday in his space in the Jumbotron. We need 100K plus freedmen running for office all around the country, running for Congress, running all that now. We need what I call a freedmen political renaissance right now. We are the culture. We make hip hop popping. We make clothes popping. We make music popping. Everything about America that's popping, it has to do with us. And we clearly doing the same thing with politics. If we come with a conscious mind and a conscious heart for our people, is majority black, they're going to vote for us. Now, something that I will speak on the black majority is that's true. We need black majority states. We need black majority states so we can gain the political power that we deserve and to pass our own legislation that we up here talking about because they're not going to give us nothing. We're going to have to take it in a political way, which is what we do. So the plan forward is, again, using that freedom status because that can't hold it in court. Race can't. Running for office and being the change that we want to see. And we have to be the change that we want to see because voting blue or voting red is not going to do for us. We have to do for self. And how we can do for self is run ourselves and vote for ourselves.
100%. Hey, bro, I love that you always speak the truth. Let me just add something to lighten up the room. One of the things I think would be funny, because I do see all this beef going back and forth, and we over here staying focused. But something that was kind of a joke. You know how Soulja Boy he saw all the songs that were going viral on the Billboard, and he used to upload his songs and change them to whatever the Billboard 100 songs were, and people would click on his song and download it, and it would be his song playing. I was just thinking, I was like, I should rename the title of this space like Tariq versus Check, and then I bet we have 1 million people in here. You know what I mean? And then start reading the Freedmen Bureau Act. But for real though, people be getting distracted. It's like, come on, we gotta stay focused, y'all. We gotta stay focused. But yeah, I just want to add that.
You're not right, Fraud. And actually, you might be onto something.
Man, yeah. We might be. I have to give a special shout out to the sister Sam. Is that how you pronounce her name?
Yes, that's my name. Sam.
I forgot where you was located. One of the pull-up spaces, kicking that knowledge, very passionate about where you from, and that's what we need right now. So I just want to give a shout out to you. Please follow this sister. We need that type of passion in the movement right now. What we doing for our people. So I'm happy to see you here. And yeah, welcome home.
let me just jump in. I'll come back from my speaking, but I'm gonna piggyback on that Sav comment. Sav is the future. Sav is the person I want to replace me here in Ohio. She just joined Ohioans for Federal Reparations on the board, so I appreciate her for doing that. She out here doing the real work. She doing the work from Ohio State. So yeah, follow that sister. She really out here putting in work. She really just showed up to do the work, no questions asked, and she young, she's smart. So yeah, definitely. Just to piggyback on what Harriet was saying, follow Sav.
Got good discernment, bro. Got good discernment. Let's go.
A million % agree with that. I've seen Sav in these spaces recently, and she's always had great contributions. So definitely, Sav is. Everyone go follow Sav as well. Okay, I think FBA Vader, you were next up, and then we'll get back to Amia, and then go back to everyone who's got a chance to speak so far.
Greetings, fam. Peace, delineations, deportations, and reparations. So, Mr. Lloyd Kelly, I came in the room like right when you were speaking, and I do want to offer like an not as dire a path to reparations, which we don't need like we don't need a simple majority or a majority to make our way to reparations. What we need is to get someone in there like Marcel and maybe a few others, sure, but we just need for the first wedge issue to come up where they need the votes and they need the caucus, and so they have to give something up to get Marcel's vote, right? Or however many people that we get in there. And the same thing from a president, someone who is greedy enough or sympathetic to our cause enough to sign it when it comes. But we just gotta really work hard to get as many people as we can in there, and we don't need to get 51 people in the Senate. We just need to get enough, because there's always a wedge issue where they need to deal and caucus and get more votes. And you're always hearing about them having to work across the aisle to get their votes and stuff. And this will be no different, right? As long as we get someone in there to champion our bill, and they need his vote, or many people's votes, then we can get there. So I want us to not have that such a dire picture in our head. We can get there, and I'm gonna land the plane right there. Thank you.
Thank you for that, FBA Vader. I definitely agree with you, and I think that's a good insight. It's important to know which numbers will tip the scale in terms of majority in the House, in the Senate. But in terms of what you said, yeah, it is possible to get things done with one person, but they have to be like rebel, and they have to have all their cards lined up. So, for example, reparations, what Marcel's doing, bringing a bill like that to the forefront. And a counter example is Joe Manchin. Like, I don't like him or endorse him or anything like that, but he's stopping like entire bills with one vote. You know what I mean? So we have to understand that it's usually a give and take in Congress. So we want someone who's going to like stand for freedmen and get things done, because they know that, hey, if we try to block like a Marcel or a Lloyd or anybody else on this bill, they're not going to agree when we need their one vote. You know what I mean? And then we're going to be looking stupid. You know what I mean? So there's a trade-off, and we got to use that. A vote in Congress is powerful, and we have to realize one of the statistics I learned is during Reconstruction, when Andrew Johnson took over, he did 21 vetoes, more than the past presidents combined. And those 21 vetoes were 71% of those vetoes were overridden by Congress. So that's the power that is in Congress. You can even say screw a president, even if they don't agree with you. Okay, so let's go to Amia, and then we'll get to everybody else.
Let's see, who's that? The Freedmen co-host and everybody in the space. Peace and reparations. I just got off and I got in kind of late, so I'm going to replay your space. But so far, it's been a really good space. You always have really good spaces. You always bring the facts, and that's why I follow you. And I'll definitely go ahead and follow Sav as well. It sounds like she's doing good stuff, so congratulations. And thank you guys. Thank you all for doing the heavy lifting. Black, majority say you, Lloyd Kelly, everybody, doing the heavy lifting. And one of the reasons why I really do like you, the Freedom Party, is because you are the closest that we have to an actual food party, to an actual Black party. And I know you just get off the ground, but I really do like everything that you do. And you're right, drama sales. So put in like a drama sales title, and I bet you'll have a lot more people come in. But great space. I'll go ahead and drop down. Thank you guys for everything that y'all are doing the heavy lifting, and much appreciation.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Maybe I'll change the title of the space right now just to troll, since we already got through the chunk of the meat of the potatoes. Give me a second. But let me just shout out some people on the stage. First of all of our speakers are amazing. Let me just say that. I love Black. Me and Black be going back and forth all the time. So we have to be able to have tough conversations without hating each other. As long as we're going for it with the same mission, same goals, there's no beef, right? We just want to get there as fast as we can. You know what I mean? So that should be the goal. So yeah, definitely go follow Freedmen, who's in the party. Follow Black Majority. Go follow Lloyd. Follow Sav. Follow Marcus, who's been representing Ohio. We got connected with him and helped out with the Jalen Walker situation down there. Follow Mia. Mia's awesome. And then Freedman Angel's been in our spaces recently too, and she's amazing. And Talent, I really appreciate your thoughts today. So go follow Talent as well. And I can't name everybody in the space. I'll be here for a few minutes, but I do appreciate all the listeners as well. It takes a village, so we all got to come together. So appreciate y'all being here. All right, now let's get back to the speakers who got a chance. We'll do Free One, then Lloyd, then Marcus, then Freeman, or then Talent, then Freeman Angel.
Yeah, I just want to say there's questions, like if you hit that comment button, there's people asking questions in the comment section. I guess they're not on the stage. If you want to address that.
Okay, yeah, let me see. It said, I tried to raise my hand, no worries. My question is, why is there a new bill needed when they haven't honored the treaty and the acts that's in the Constitution? So that's not an entirely true story. They did honor it. They honored it until 1877 when it became politically inconvenient for them to honor it. So that's why, our sustained political activity is important. And the biggest difference probably between 1865 and now is they can't get away with a lot of things they could get away with back then. They were stuffing ballots. They were doing massacres and lynchings, and like, even though they're still doing lynchings and massacres now, it's something where the international government is able, or international community is able to respond and call people out, and there's more accountability than I believe existed back then. Now, obviously, it's not perfect; otherwise, we would be where the hell we need to be. But in terms of they're like apologizing and fixing all types of things that are way sillier than the important things that need to be fixed and actually have serious harms associated with them. The other question, let me see that they asked. Why are we depending? Let's see. That's another question. Yeah, why are we depending, I guess, on votes? We need to sue. It's called demand, not ask. Well, we need to attack every branch of government. We need to go to the executive branch. We need to go to the judicial and the legislative. We need to use every branch at our disposal as leverage. It says, yeah, you may have to try everyone with their fake dramatic Twitter space title in order to get back room. I'm for it. Thanks, Boss Hog. I'll definitely go do that. And then Sav said, I'm glad we're all coming together having these good conversations and doing the work. Thank you for the shout out. Of course, Sav. Okay, now let's get back to the hand. So Lloyd, and then Marcus, then Talent, then Freedman Angel.
Thanks. Here's the thing. First, I want to clarify something. The Freedmen's Bureau Act and the Freedmen's Bank Bureau Act are not constitutional They're not part of the Constitution. They were laws. All laws have to pass constitutional muster, but the Constitution is different than a law. And so the law is how we operate every day. The Constitution is why we can operate. So one of the things that we have to be concerned about going forward is, do we want a law, which the next political regime change can come in and change, or do we want something in the Constitution which takes, I think, 3/5 vote of the to be ratified by 3/5 of all states? And it takes 34 to make a constitutional change amendment. You need 34 states to ratify it or to agree. So, we have to, now that we've begun to understand what we have to do or what we want, meaning reparations, meaning criminal justice reform, meaning all these things, now we have to change the conversation, pivot the conversation to how do we get them. And the way that we get them is understanding how the game is played. So when someone says Constitution says this, no, the law says this. Oh, and this is the other piece I wanted to bring up. Nothing operates in a vacuum. So yes, I think it was you, Freed, that said that when you kill somebody, the law says it's either a capital offense or you go to jail for life and you pay $1 million. Well, here's how you get around it with police officers killing people, because nothing operates in a vacuum. You simply create a law that calls for qualified immunity. If a police officer is reasonably in fear of their life, then you can't charge them with anything. So then you have to ask yourself, well, what is reasonable? Well, I thought he was going to kill me, even though he was running away from me with his hands in the air. But we have got to learn how to play the game. And we can't be concerned about the humanitarianism of it. We have to learn how to play and then put our humanitarianism into that so that we can win. Because unless you are sitting at the table, sitting in Congress, sitting in the state legislature, sitting on a city council, or you're a mayor, a governor, or the president, we can't do anything. We can't. So now it's time to stop talking about what we need to do and literally start doing it. Meaning, understand that, Marcus, we need 55 seats because those people vote for us. They represent us. And you mentioned Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are only as powerful as they are because the Senate is split 50-50. Which means that if Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema says, no, I'm not doing that, Chuck Schumer or the president don't have the votes they need to do something. So pretty much when you're that deciding vote, yeah, he doesn't need anybody else because he's the deciding vote, but that happens so very rarely. So what we want to do is get all 55 seats with the understanding when we identify those, we don't just say so-and-so is going to run. We identify people. We create the people that we're going to, the 55 people that we're going to put up. We elect them with the understanding, this is what you're going to go and do. And if you don't, you will not be there any longer. And that way, they can't peel off one. They have to peel off 55. It's thinking strategically. Once we know what we want to do, now we need to pivot the conversation to how we're going to do it.
Yeah, I think that's great, and just to be clear, I think we should get as many as we can in the House, as many as we can in the Senate, and in terms of, I think it's also a good insight that you mentioned in terms of the 100 people in the Senate. Yeah, if it's you need 51 votes, there's always one person that can stop anything, basically, right? So that is important. In the House, it's 218, and obviously one person could still, do some damage, but not as much as in the Senate. So the more people we have in the House, the better. The more people we have in the Senate, the better. Um, the more votes, the more people on code, the more people who endorse reparations now, Freedmen Reconstruction, and genocide prevention, the better. So let's go to CJ Willis just came up here. Let's go to CJ Willis. I'm gonna slightly change the order and then go back to all the hands. What up, CJ Willis? Good to see you on the stage. Everyone go follow CJ Willis too.
Yo, peace and reparations, everybody. Peace. Yo, I'm gonna piggyback a little bit on what Harry was saying, but I also want to talk about what Lloyd's saying, and go slightly off topic. I said this before in space, and I'm echoing what Harry is saying. We need 100,000 people like myself, but I'm hearing what Lloyd's saying, and we also need 100,000 people like Lloyd. If we're going to run all these people, we also need policy people who know policy. So just like we need to duplicate Marcel, we need to duplicate Lloyd. Brother Lloyd, I'm hearing you kicking that Nas, dropping those jewels. We need to sit down and get those jewels from you as well, and people like you. And I'm gonna land my plane on that.
Yes, 100%. Lloyd is a genius, and we need to support Lloyd. Lloyd is running, and we need to support Lloyd. He definitely has the party's endorsement, and we're gonna do everything we can help from the party to push his campaign forward.
I just want to say thank you for that compliment because thank you. That's all I can say. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. You deserve it, bro. Thank you, CJ Willis, for the kind words. I think you're a great person. So thanks for spreading the love around. I think we got to give each other our flowers while we're still here. You know what I mean? Okay, so let's get back to the hands. Maybe slightly. I think it was Marcus, then Talent, then Freedman Angel, then Sav.
All right. Thank you for letting me speak again. Thank you again for the help with Jalen Walker. I just want to appreciate y'all, the Freedmen Party, all the work y'all did here in Ohio. Y'all didn't take no credit for it. Y'all didn't promote that. Y'all just did the work underground. So I appreciate the fuck out of y'all for that. Excuse my language. That also being said, to Lloyd, before I say anything counter to anything you said, I just want to say thank you for running as a reparations candidate. I appreciate you. I appreciate the effort everybody making. So for you to be running as a candidate, that's exactly what we need. So I want to make it clear that I agree that we need people running. But the only thing I say, and it may sound counter to it, so that's why I said all the flowers first, is because you need to understand what a white lash is. These people are going to respond no matter what you do. That's the Republican Party, that's the Democratic Party, that's the Green Party. Any party that's seeking power is going to get your ass out the way if you aren't doing what they want you to do. I can talk to people who are running for Ohio 11, Tariq Shabazz out here. We were working with him, our 501c4 was working with him to get him closer to reparations as Dr. Sandy Darity likes, or the ARC, the way that he's structured ARC. I'll just leave it at that. Long story short, the Democrats ran a whole nother primary candidate with his last name to confuse voters. On top of the fact that he was a minor candidate that they were sabotaging because they were sabotaging the shit out of Nina Turner. And she ain't even for us like that. So if they're sabotaging people like Nina Turner, they're going to sabotage us that's fighting for reparations. So we have to be prepared for not just legislation, not just voting. We have to be prepared on all ends. We need to be working with the fruit of Islam. Like, we need our own security. We need sovereignty. Like, this can't just be we think we're going to pass some legislation. Like, we need to pay attention to our history. This is why it's so terrible that a lot of our history isn't passed down. And I'm glad that you were given this space and speaking on things you were speaking on, because that's why I said what I said before about them stealing, taking, being jealous, dehumanizing us, because that's all it takes is for them to look at us as less than human, for them to justify everything that happens. How many of us get murdered in this country by the police all the time, become hashtags, and these people justify it? So you want me to believe that these people are just going to pass laws and not look at us? No. We got to look at our enemy in the face and understand who they are and how they see us. and we'd be foolish not to. But I also agree with everything everybody's saying, and I stand on that stuff too. No, we do need 1,000 Marcells. We need 1,000 Lloyds. We need 1,000 of us in there that's going to stand on reparations first and for our people first, and they can be the Joe Manchins and the Kirsten Cinemas because they will hold up the vote for their people. We need a real caucus for us, not a caucus for the Democrats that says they're for us because they look like us. And I'll land my plane there.
Yes. Yeah, bro, I totally agree. 2 points I want to add before I go back to the hands. I mentioned this before. It's such an important statistic to me. 2,000 freedmen were in elected office during Reconstruction, post-emancipation. So if there's 2,000 freedmen in elected office post-emancipation, there was more than 2,000 that ran, that campaigned for elected office. You see what I'm saying? So we have to understand we come from a lineage of people that accomplished amazing things, so much amazing things that they wanted to end Reconstruction, that the Republicans and the Democrats came to an agreement to end Reconstruction because they said these Negroes is getting too powerful. So that's what we have to get back to. And the other thing I was going to say, the sheriff, as well as the judge, the DA, these are elected positions. So we can't just complain about what the judge decides when we're not running to be a judge. We can't be just mad about what the chief of police and what the sheriff are doing if we're not fighting for positions in the city council and the mayor and for the sheriff. Like, all these things are positions that control our lives, and the more positions we hold, the better off we are. We want them to be afraid of Negro rule again. You know what I mean? Make that a hashtag. How y'all like the name of the space? Y'all digging it? Let's see who was next. We did Marcus. I think it was Talent, then Freedman Angel, then Sav, and then we'll do Free One and Lloyd.
I just want to say the name of the space is funny. That's all. I like it.
Thank you. You know, I had to throw a little humor in there. All right, go for it. Talent balance, but let's go to Freedman, Angel, and then Sav, then Lloyd.
Hey, yeah, to piggyback on what Lloyd's saying, and also some of what Marcus is saying. And I totally agree. We need 1,000 Marcells, we need 1,000 what we need. We do need 100,000 freedom candidates. But in the meantime, while we're getting this, I think we really need to be realistic about how to play politics. When Joe Biden had that very disrespectful meeting with the Black Caucus that got out, what he said was, well, you all going to have to learn how to work with the Latinos. I say no, we don't need to work with the Latinos. We need to learn how to work with the Republicans. And playing politics is giving people something for something in return, giving people something in return for their votes. So what do we have? What would we have to bargain? Well, if we get reparations, maybe, your district, say if we need 5 Republicans to get reparations, what about we get our reparations? What about we build 5 new state-of-the-art Freedmen universities in your district? Something like that. Let's be creative. Let's, we're playing politics, we got to play politics. So I think we need to start thinking out of the box. We know these Democrats are basically just trying to get as many illegals and immigrants to vote so they can dilute us. Let's learn how to start playing the game the way they do. We don't have, what is it the saying? We don't have any permanent friends, only permanent interests. We don't have any permanent enemies, only permanent interests. So let's start thinking about out of the box, and we may have to go to them and deal with them. But frankly, they seem more, it doesn't seem like as many Democrats as there are Congress. The Republicans always seem to have control anyway. So, I'm for, doing what we need to do with playing politics the way it's played. That I land my plane.
Thank you for that, Freedman Angel. Just to add to that, I like to dispel some myths because I think you're overall right, but we have to dispel the myths about who has power and who doesn't. The Republicans and the Democrats have imagined power, like they have power in perception, but not power in reality. If you look at the trend from 2004 to now, month by month, the Republicans are dying. They have 27% of registered voters. The Democrats have 27% of registered voters. Independents have 43%. And that trend is increasing, meaning that the independents are increasing and both other parties, the two major parties, are dying. And if they hit the 25%, if they get below 25% of registered members and voters, they will lose their major party status and no longer get $100 million each to run candidates against us. We basically pay taxpayer money to fund the two major parties. And then in terms of the value of the vote, we calculated the value of a vote. In 2020, it was $90 per voter. So if you look at our Freedmen voting block of 32 million eligible voters, that's a block of worth $3 billion. I mentioned earlier that Michael Bloomberg, who's a billionaire, lost the 2020 campaign in the primaries, which means he spent $1 billion and lost in the primaries. So the leverage we have is in our vote, because our vote is valuable. And if we're able to organize into a block, for example, the 12 million of us that are non-voting, that's a voting block of $1 billion worth that is essentially being burned. It's imagine 12 million people, each individually thinking they're just the only one wasting their vote and burning $90. Like, oh, $90 is not that bad. Well, if 12 million people think the same thing, that's $1 billion down the drain. You would never, one, give someone $3 billion, 32 million votes without something in return, policy and clear agenda, like reparations now, freedmen reconstruction, and genocide prevention. And you would never burn $1 billion without spending it. It just doesn't make sense. So we have to recognize our power is in our vote, and it's the one way we can materialize money without needing to really ask anyone else. All we have to do is come together, and that value is materialized in the fact that these people spend that much money trying to get our votes every year, campaigning. Okay, so let's go to talent. We got you back up here, so let's go to talent, and then we'll go to Sab, then Lloyd.
Hey, peace again, peace again.
Peace.
Where I'm at is where I kind of get caught, and this is where I need help. When we say that it just dissolved, or the federal, the Freedmen's Bureau, or the protected class status ends in 1877. Are we talking legislation? Are we talking benign neglect? And what are we talking when we really start to get into the classification aspect of these terms that mean legal status, or what means that we are defined as a race or a nation in natural law aspects? And how can the conversation, I guess to me, I'm trying to make sense of, we are dealing with the class, I wouldn't say we're dealing with a crime against humanity, ethnocide, genocide, a nation that has already been established prior to the term of freedmen. We had already been a race of Negroes on an ethnological and anthropological level. And it's been, significantly published in the 1854 Claims of the Negro, the ethno-genocide that is happening to our people. I sometimes get stuck when we get into the political aspect of what has not been delivered, and then I get stuck when we have to deal with the color of law versus the reclassifications and statuses, and then how do we justify our claim on a federal level through legislation and policy, or on a judicial level through actually taking our federal government to court. Is this the high court? Are we, as charging them with a crime against humanity? Because what is the honest reality happening in some of the cases, the Freedmen term is the lack of understanding of exactly what the hell happened. And did we lose our status by a law that was passed? Are we looking at the 13th Amendment that made us citizens under a legal status that did not describe us as a nation of people, similar to these tribes that kind of have to deal with the Department of Interior and deal with the federal government? in comparison to Asians and other communities that may have had their races acknowledged on the census on the federal level for 1900, and how we see here the Asians get a protected class status with the COVID-19 bill, where we see how the Jews are able to finagle them way their way in as a nation under some type of religious / ethnic origin, story. So I get lost when we start to say politically what are the moves that are needed to be made based on precedents that's already on the books and deliveries that have not been actually delivered. And why does it seem as though this just can't be us going in front of the White House and just saying, yo, we not moving until y'all niggas get this cleared up. And if it's not the White House, because that's maybe who we need to be bringing to court, who is the high court that we need to be taking the federal government to, and under what status do we need to be taking them under? Am I rolling through as an American Negro, and I'm coming through with the paperwork of all the studies of the American Negro? Am I rolling through as an American freedman, and I'm going with the fake stubs and my ancestors' documentations of them having a freedman status? And what is that when we're talking about ethnocide laws that were created during wartime that deal with the humanitarian aspect of seeing us as humans? So,
all right, so I'm gonna try to tackle that. You gave me a whole full plate, but I pulled up the slide that we talk about Freedmen Reconstruction. Again, there's a difference between race, nationality, and citizenship. African, Black, Colored, Negro, Afro are all interchangeable. You call yourself whatever you want in terms of race. Race is not your status of citizenship. Freedmen, you could be a Negro freedman, you could be a colored freedman, Afro freedman, you know what I mean? African, Black, whatever type of freedman you want to be, doesn't that part is race is a social construct. So however you decide to define yourself racially, that is not the same as your nationality, which has a legal representation, and your status of citizenship as well. Now, in terms of you mentioned ethnocide, genocide, and crimes against humanity. I want to do something that's super important because when I was going through the research on genocide, I learned the differences between the ethnocide and crimes against humanity, and there's important differences that we all should know. Firstly, crimes against humanity are not specifically directed at a group, meaning it could be multiple groups. It could be it is like random. It's not specific towards a group. Genocide is specific to a group, and I could pull up the definition and read through all of those. But things like lynching and massacres, preventing births, um, physical and mental harm, and apartheid, family separation, for example. And then ethnocide is about culture, about erasing your culture. So we have to essentially, be very clear in what we're talking about. And also, the other difference between genocide and crimes against humanity is the United Nations and 196 countries that are part of the United Nations. They only have agreed to genocide and war crimes. Crimes against humanity have not been fully agreed upon and basically have no legal standing. Um, so not only is it not targeted at a specific group, genocide is targeted at a specific group, which in this case is freedmen, right? And our status, again, you could call yourself African American freedman, Black American freedman, Colored American freedman, Negro American freedman, Afro American freedman. That you're still a freedman at the end of the day, as long as you have an ancestor that was a freedman, meaning someone who was emancipated in the United States, or the five tribes. So that definition is clear and is unmistakable. In terms of where we need to go, there's three branches of government, and we need to address all of them. Uh, Primarily the legislative branch through Congress, the House and the Senate, which we've been talking about, and then the president and the vice president and the executive branch, and then you also have the judicial branch. The 14th Amendment talks about equal protection of the laws and how basically if we're denied, we can go straight to the highest court, which is the Supreme Court. Um, in terms of, you said, why did Reconstruction end? There was no like formal legislation that ended it. It was like I said, the election of 1876 and the Compromise of 1877, and them coming to a meeting. Now, the only legislative part about that was Congress created a committee that it was a 9-person committee, and they voted on who were going to be the president. That was the contention, and the majority on the panel it was 5-4, right? So 5 were Republicans, 4 were Democrats. So they're kind of destined to lose on the Democratic side. Point is, that was the only legislative part of it, but the decision was not about ending Reconstruction. It was only about deciding who was president. But in terms of those backfield meetings, it was used to not only decide, hey, we'll let the Republicans be president, and then you guys have to pull out the Union troops from the South and stop protecting freedmen. So there was no formal legislation. It was a backroom deal that led to that. Even if you go through the 14th, 15th, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, all of those laws need to be actually upheld. We were going through one the other day. We always talk, or not we, but the Democrats like to try to pull our chain and say, hey, you're going to lose your voting rights. Da, 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 da. If you go to the 14th Amendment, Section 2, which I have up on my screen, it says basically when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for president and vice president of the United States, representative in Congress, executive and judicial officers of the state, or the members of a legislature is denied. When it's denied, except for the participation in rebellion or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number to the whole of such state. So basically, that's a voter suppression law right there. And we don't need to recreate these laws. We need to enforce laws that are already on the books. That's why having political power matters, because you can only enforce what you have the political power to enforce. And, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment haven't been enforced because there's not the sufficient political power to enforce them. And so when you're in a country that you have 32 million eligible voters and 12 million of them aren't voting, and we're at like around 60% voter turnout compared to, like I said, 80% was our highest during Reconstruction. We also had a high of around 70% during 2008 and 2012 when we got finessed by Obama. But again, the point is, if we have voter turnout and have our policy party and politicians aligned, we decide who's going to be in office and don't let them be fed to us by, for example, the Democrats or Republicans without our consent. So, we have to get politically active. We have to decide, hey, our vote is valuable and we should do everything in our power, give ourselves a chance, right? We had the Freedmen. We've only had 2 political parties in our history that were Freedmen founded. We had the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, founded by Fannie Lou Hamer in the 60s. And then you had the Black Panther Party, founded also in the 60s. The Freedmen Democratic Party lasted for 4 years. The Black Panther Party lasted for 16 years, 4 times longer. Now, if you look at the history of the Republicans and the Democrats, they've both been around for damn near 200 years. And in our own history as voters, we served the Republicans for the first 74 years and the Democrats for the next 76 years. So how about we give ourselves a chance, build our own party up, come together as voters, decide who's going to be our politicians, what our policy is going to be, and then use the party as our way to achieve those goals, right? And I mentioned the leverage we have, the same way that Lloyd was talking about that one vote in the Senate that can flip either way. Well, voting is the same way. If you look at the 2020 election and even the past like elections from till 2000, for example, and beyond, most of them are decided by a few million votes, right? So 7 million votes decided the last election. We're 32 million strong. So if we're 32 million strong and actually come together, we can easily decide presidential elections, and we can easily decide local and state elections as well. We just need to organize. One of my favorite quotes by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he says, people who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those that love war. And we have not done that. The white supremacist assholes have been doing everything to organize against us and to destroy us. And we've been hopping between plantations of the Democrats and Republicans looking for salvation instead of following the Underground Railroad that our ancestors laid during Reconstruction and during the 60s with the two parties, the Freedom Democrats and the Black Panthers. So we need to get back to that. The reason that the NAACP, the reason that the all these kind of legacy organizations are still around is because they are inherently politically inept. They have no political power. That's why they were allowed to survive. The Freedom Democratic Party and the Black Panthers were sabotaged purposely because of their political power. Now, if you look back historically and you're just like, well, I should just go with what exists, not with what was destroyed, right? That would be saying, oh, well, we don't need the Freedmen's Bureau because that didn't work out because that was destroyed. We don't need the Freedmen's Bank because that was destroyed. We don't need this and that. No, the things that were destroyed are the exact things that we need, and they were destroyed because of the power that they gave us. So we just have to kind of go back through, wash out all of the BS and say, no, let's focus. Freedmen, Reconstruction 2.0, Freedmen's Bureau, Freedmen's Bank, Freedmen Schools, Freedmen Hospitals. Get back to that. And the way we do that is with our party, politician, and policy. All right, let's get back to the hands. Let's go to Sav and then Lloyd.
So he talked about maybe like a centralized location place. And I mean, the DC pull up is still a thing. And maybe having this be one of the main things that we talk about, right? Because I know we're not going to go empty-handed, so I think that's important, keeping in the back of our minds. I'm planning on going to the DC pull-up, inshallah. But you know, for me personally, I look at it like this. I'm all about policy. I went to school for it. You know, I got my bachelor's, you know, public management, leadership, and policy. And you know, Lloyd, I would love to hear, you know, more. I've been, you know, looking over Marcel's plan myself, and you know, because I think it's more concrete versus the laughable Bill Biden's plan. What he has, I don't think he's even touched his plan for us yet. That's a whole nother conversation. But definitely, you know, especially given that, you know, I talked about how now's the time. You know, you don't see the effects of a policy until about 20 years. So we want to see 2020, you know, 2020 or 2040, that everything that we're talking about now already full-fledged in effect. So, you know, yes, time is now, you know, definitely willing to learn from my elders. I had the opportunity to run for a seat, for like a district seat, like local BNC chapter, and I couldn't do it because I knew that anything and everything that I was passionate about, the people around me weren't necessarily passionate. That's just what, you know, the BNC is, you know, white, you know, liberal. You know, that's a whole other topic, but definitely, Lloyd, thank you for dropping, you know, the knowledge, and again, reiterating that reparations plan, because the numbers are set. You said 2.4 is actually 2.8. I mean, really, you know, the numbers are already set, but thank you for sharing that, because I think I've seen some numbers and they've lowballed for sure, like 100,000, 300,000. I think Chicago was given like 150,000. Like, no. So be cautious and wary of the state individual reparation plans, you know, making sure that it is like under one accord, and, you know, attacking all branches of government, because that's how they'll hear us and know that we're serious. But yes, thank you.
Yeah, just to add to that before I go to Lloyd really quickly, another thing that I think is important, especially when we look back to like the 60s versus now, you know, before the civil rights bills of the 60s were really passed, they marched and did all these other things because they didn't have the right to vote. So they had to march. They couldn't just vote and get these people out of office. They had to march to get the right to vote back. Now, I'm not saying we should stop marching, but if we're going to march, it needs to be combined with our vote. Like, think about marching as like it's obviously protesting, but it's more of a marketing thing. It's more to get attention on the issue. Um, but if we're out there marching, like especially what we did with George Floyd, it was amazing all the turnout. But imagine if we actually got legislation passed. We should have got reparations passed during that time. Like, I'm just disgusted like that. Out of all these pledges, all the commitments that these lame companies and everybody else tried to say they were going to do, we didn't get nothing tangible out of that. Let's be honest. And so if we're marching and chanting and doing all these great things, that is from the 60s because they didn't have the right to vote. So if we're going to keep marching to get the cameras on us and all that great stuff in terms of media attention, that's cool. But that's not the purpose of marching, and to substitute our vote. You see what I'm saying? Our vote combined with the protesting is a key formula. You know what I mean? So let's not think it's like an either or. We vote and we don't march, or we march and we don't vote. No, we have to do both because the marching gets the media attention, lets people know that there's a significant group of people out here that care about this. And then the voting lets them know, hey, we're going to get you out of office. We're going to fire you with our vote. And one of the things I'm going to get back to just historically, again, jokingly, make them afraid of Negro rule again. You know what I mean? I want them to like be trying to plan how to do another Wilmington. Like that afraid. Like, dang, like they voting us out of office. It's just a bunch of black people in office. This is crazy. That's how mad we want them to be. You know what I mean? That's what we have to get back to. That's what made the white backlash happen because they saw us gaining political power. It wasn't them being like, oh yeah, now they're free. Let's make the black codes. No, it was, oh, they're free. Now they got voting rights. Now they're putting people in office. There's 2,000 of them in elected office. Now the backlash came, right? So we got to understand the order of events. That's why they had to do the 60s again. You know what I mean? The 1860s to the 1960s. 100 years later, they just resurrected all the Reconstruction Acts. And what we're doing damn near 50, 60 years later is going back to Reconstruction and finishing the job. They assassinated Dr. King, Malcolm X within like a 4-year period. They even on the white side assassinated JFK and RFK. So there was a period of like terror that rained down to stop what was happening during the civil rights era from getting completed. Dr. King in his last speech talked about pulling our money together, pulling our vote, our voices, and boycotting and pulling our money to our own businesses. He said, let's have a bank in. I was like, dang, that's fire. He said, let's have an insurance in, basically banking with black people, freedmen, having our insurance with freedmen, doing everything financial that we can with each other. And he also said, we're coming to get our check. You know what I mean? Those things cost him his life. And we have to finish the job and honor our ancestors. So let me go to Lloyd, and then we'll start winding down.
Yeah. Thanks. There's a whole lot that needs clarification here. And we're going to start with, I don't remember who said it, but somebody said that the 13th Amendment gave us citizenship. No, it did not. It abolished slavery. What gave us citizenship was it was Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution. And we were always citizens, but we were considered 3/5 of a human being for purposes of voting. But we always had citizenship.
Can you say that code again? Can you say where in the Constitution again? My bad.
Article 1, Section 2 talks about of the Constitution of the United States Constitution declared that any person who was not free would be counted as 3/5 of a free individual for the purposes of determining congressional representation. Now, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery. And then the 14th Amendment said that you can't mistreat people based on anything. If you are a citizen of the United States or you were born as a citizen, you have certain unalienable rights. Okay? Now that being said, once again, it was never illegal for us to vote. It's very important you understand the nuance of this stuff. It was never illegal for us to vote. What happened is they made it impossible for us to vote. So that's what the voter suppression laws were all about. So you would go to vote, and they were like, okay, but before you can vote, you have to tell them they have a big jar with let's say pinto beans in it. You got to tell me how many beans are in this jar. You have to be able to sign your name. But you can't use a mark. You have to sign your name. Well, people don't know how to do that. So they're not telling you you can't vote. They're making it impossible for you to vote. But be clear, you always had the right to vote. And understanding that this is how they play the game, they're not going to ever say you can't do something. They're just going to make it impossible for you to do it. Now, poll taxes. Oh, yeah, you got to pay $3 or $5 or whatever, all kinds of stuff. But they never said you couldn't vote. Here's what we have to do. We have to recognize that this is how they play the game and be prepared for it. See, we stop saying to them, like, when most people talk about reparations, we want reparations. They don't say we want $2.8 million per person. They say we want reparations, which is kind of like saying, what are you willing to do for me? To them. Keeping the mindset is, white folks always have to stay in charge, so we're going to set the rules, like, to keep them in charge. So my position is we take the plan that Marcelo's campaign put out, and we say this is what we want. Down. So that way they're not saying, well, we'll give you $100,000. No, this is what we want, and this is why we want, this is why we're entitled to it. And this is how you can do it. So that when we step to them, our argument is bulletproof. Whatever the argument is, it's bulletproof. We've used history, we've used our brains, we've used what's going on today, and we create something that they cannot say anything but, okay, now can we at least negotiate, right? So, and so when we do these spaces, we have to use the right language, and we have to be factually correct. We can no longer go around telling people that you were never citizens. We've always been citizens. We're 3/5 of a human being so that the South could take over the country. And it wasn't Southerners that did that. It was the North that made us 3/5 of a human being so that the South could not run the politics of this government. And we have to begin. Go ahead.
Can I say something real quick? My understanding, 3/5 compromise did not make us 3/5 of a human being, but it was more so dealing with the legislation. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, well, I'll read it. Okay, Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution declares that any person who is not free would be counted as 3/5 of a free individual, and here's the important part, for the purposes of determining congressional representation. So for the purposes of determining congressional representation tells you it was a political move by the North to make sure that the South didn't take over and control Congress and the presidency unfairly. Right. But if we were full human beings at that time, because we were citizens, and if we were allowed to vote, the South would be running everything.
Yeah, let me add to that, Lloyd, because I totally agree with you. When people ask, like, where are our civil rights and like our rights as citizens, our right to vote, all these things are enshrined in the same place white people find theirs. We need to stop thinking there's just imaginary categories that we have to have extra amendments, extra bills. Now, the 14th Amendment, just to add to Lloyd's point, also has a part about naturalization. and birthright citizenship. And when I was going through Reconstruction, it was explained in a very important way. The reason the 14th Amendment, Section 1 was created is because the Congress was afraid that the South would try to find other ways to prevent freedmen from being citizens. So they were like, well, if you're born in the country, you're a citizen essentially. So they tried to make that a rule so that there was no way the South could try to remove our citizenship from us. So all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the states of the United States and the state wherein they reside. And it says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law.
Can we talk about that for just a second? What that literally means? It meant that Jim Crow laws, the second they were put into place, were unconstitutional.
Exactly.
The 14th Amendment says implicitly, no right shall be abridged or whatever the rest of it said. But the Jim Crow laws were unconstitutional. But we didn't read the Constitution to go, wait a minute, I don't need you to treat me fairly. It says it right here, you can't do this.
Exactly. 100% agree with you. And that's why we really have to go and just enforce not only what's on the book, but then resurrect which was killed. You know what I mean? The Freedmen's Bureau, the Freedmen's Bank, for example. And the Freedmen's Bureau included our freedmen schools and hospitals, just to be clear. Lloyd, did you want to say any last thing before I go to Big Boda?
Yeah, I just want people to understand that when we learn how to use the power that we are born with, meaning when you are born with power. You have a brain, and your power is whatever your brain can come up with. But if you, what happens is we live in a society that begins to teach you that your power is useless. So by the time you're 10, 12, especially if you're a black male, by the time you're 10, 12, the only thing you can do is fight or sling drugs and shoot people to get your power. And as long as you do that, what's so sick about this is that when they arrest you and put you in jail for those crimes that we're committing, they make $36,000 a year off your black ass. Just saying.
100% agree. And I take the perspective that if all of the people who, like, for example, like I grew up in North Long Beach, so I know the history of, like, you know, Crips and things like that. Those were created after the destruction of the Black Panthers. That's how you got the gangs like the Crips and the Bloods. Like, if you look at why they were created, they were initially created to do the same thing the Black Panthers were doing, which was to protect their community. It was after the 80s came into play with the whole crack cocaine that changed. But before I go off into a tangent, Big Boda, my first time seeing you, but what's up, brother? What are your thoughts on the space?
Hey, how y'all doing, man? Like you said, my name is Big Boda. I'm out of Detroit, Michigan, FBA. I just want to say, get straight to the point. I don't think we need any more like hoops we got to jump through as far as learning the intricacies of all of the laws and stuff. It's been on the books for decades and centuries that we are owed reparations. Like, they got that on the books already without us having to turn into a lawyer. You see what I'm saying? And do everything like non-citizens don't have to do this. Going into the details and have everything Trump tight. Like, we in court. You see what I'm saying? Like, they giving money to Afghans and Ukrainians that's not even here. So I don't feel like the onus is on us to get all the language perfect to a T. Now, I understand being on code and having the agenda right and being constructive as far as that, but the onus is not on us to prove our case. Our case is already proven. It's just that they're practicing anti-Black racism and not giving us the resources that they know we deserve.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you in the sentiment that we obviously know these rules are here, and if we were living in a perfect world, we wouldn't be going through genocide. Obviously, I totally agree with you. Now, the contrast of that is kind of just the reality, like the stark reality that we are experiencing genocide and no one's coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. And so if we're not advocating for ourselves, no one's going to do it for us. So, I mean, when I was the slogan I created for Afro was reparations or revolution. Those are the only two logical solutions in my mind. Martin Luther King said chaos or community. Malcolm X said the ballot or the bullet. So there's no other option, right? So in my opinion, my personal opinion, um, you know, just getting inspired by people like Marcel and Tamara made me get reactivated politically and was like, you know what, we need to give it our all. Meaning, like, let's get active in our democracy, give it our all, and do everything we can to get what we deserve. You know what I mean? And there's obviously a breaking point, and that breaking point is where we have to think about alternate solutions. But the most important thing, we have to give it a shot. We have to honor our ancestors in the sense that we invested so much in this country. We built the American dream. We built the land of opportunity, and we should have our fair share of the pie in it. Like you know about the FBI. You know how Tariq talks about how FBI, how everybody flees. We are the one people that haven't fled because we're still here. And when you think about immigration and all these other things, there's no country we can be deported to because we're not immigrants. So the important thing we have to understand is we are so invested here that we should give it our all to make this thing right. I know it's not right that we have to make someone else do the right thing. Even the definition of uh, reparations that the UN says, it says even if the party is unable or unwilling to do it, reparations are still owed. And that's how I feel. Even if these white supremacists are unwilling or unable to try to give us the justice that we deserve, we still need to fight for it 100%. I'll give you 30 seconds to respond, Big Boda, and then we'll go to Lloyd and then give everyone last thoughts before we wrap up.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to say, I agree with you 100%. As far as me, I'm completely disengaged from the political process, unless it's somebody like you said, like Marcel. That's the only person I've donated to as far as politics is concerned. That's the only thing that would probably get me engaged in the political process is somebody talking about what we're owed and making plans to give it to us. You see what I'm saying?
100%. One of the things you'll love to hear, because I agree with you. Like Marcel and Tamara, Reverend Somerville, Camilla Moore, they inspire me. I'm like, wow, there's people that really already have the Freedmen knowledge, already understand reparation, and are putting their lives on the line to run for us. And then seeing all the spaces, it was seeing all these amazing people like in this space that were willing to support them. So I was like, okay, it's not chopped yet. You know what I mean? It's not, we haven't given up. So we haven't given up. We need to do everything we can to support them. And one of the things the party is doing, the Freedmen Party is doing, is we're creating a boot camp. Well, it already exists. The test will be out soon. The purpose of the boot camp is to create more Marcels, more Lloyds, more Tamaras, more Reverend Somervilles, more Camilla Moores. And, you know, Harriet's Pistol talked about having 100,000 people running. I think we need either 100,000 or 1,000,000 people running. You know what I mean? Like we have the only thing that you need to run is be a U.S. citizen and meet the age requirement. You got to be 25 years or older to run for the House, 30 years or older to run for the Senate, and 35 years or older to run for president or vice president. Now I'm 28, which means I can only run for the House. I can't run for Senate. I can't run for president. So we have, whatever your age is, you got to honor it because that tells you how many offices you're eligible to run for. And we need to be attacking things at the local, the state, the national level, and get as many freedmen in office. And like I said, during Reconstruction, they had 2,000 freedmen in elected office, which means more than 2,000 freedmen ran for elected office. So we need to get back to those levels. We need to fire the entire congressional Black caucus. There's 435 other seats we can go after, 100 people in the Senate. We need to take Congress over and get our own president. Even if we can put a coon like Obama in office, we can put a real Freedman in office as well. Lloyd or Big Brother, you want to say something? I'll go to Lloyd.
Yeah, just make sure you put your information out there if you get to running on the campaign or something, so we can chip in and donate. As long as you or anybody else is talking about our tangibles that we need, I'll make sure I chip in and support. Make sure I put some money on Marcel's. It's a real bad head cold boy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So one thing we just started is we got our GoFundMe's going. Freedmen, if you want to put the GoFundMe in the jumbotron really quick, what we're trying to do for 2024, we're trying to at least raise $1 million. Try to get at least 10,000 candidates. Would you say, Freedmen?
Which GoFundMe? The one with the candidates?
Yeah, with the candidates. And then, but basically, we're using that. We want to give all these candidates the chance to have a shot. We want to raise at least $1 million to fund all these candidates, give them the money they need to boost their campaigns. One of the things we developed is things like robocalls as well to help get the word out, robotext, robocalls, robo emails. So basically, we have the type of machine behind us that's needed to supercharge everybody's campaign and give everyone a fair shot. And really, it will be up to the voters to back them. So I think that's the best vehicle right now is that GoFundMe. If I get a chance or Freeman gets a chance, we'll put in the jumbotron. But Lloyd, I'll give you a chance to speak, and then we'll give everyone one more chance to speak, and we'll turn on.
Yeah, a couple things. Disengaging from the process is a strategy. The problem is that it's not as smart as the other guy's strategy because the other guy doesn't want you to vote.
Mm-hmm.
The only way you're going to change the 55 members of the Do Nothing Black Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus, is to vote them out.
Mm-hmm.
The only way you're going to do that, to vote them out, is to understand when you stand up, when a Marcel stands up, is they're going to put people in the race to take his votes away. So our job is to put it out that every single black person that is eligible to vote in black districts, which is the 53 members of the House and the 3 members of the Congressional of the Senate, is every Negro votes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is who you vote for. And it doesn't matter who else's name is on there. You're looking for one name when you walk into that booth. You press that button and you can leave.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for not the number, the name. And when they want to put 3 people with the same name up, that's okay too, because you'll have a picture or you'll have something. We do our job to educate you, to make sure you know what the game is so that you go and vote for the right name. Because we have to stop talking about what they're going to do, because what we know going into the game, we know they're going to do something. So it's like anybody who's ever been in space with me, and here it comes, knows that I always find a way to make this statement. I don't care what you do or what you say. You, on the other hand, should be very concerned about what I'm going to do about what you say or what you do. And the only way I'm comfortable saying that is because I'm prepared for you to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to everybody?
100%. And one of the things that I like to bring up is Bernie Sanders, 1988. He said that people who don't vote are non-human beings, which is probably the most honest thing Bernie Sanders has ever said. And one of the interesting facts about that is if you do not vote, by definition, you're almost a non-citizen. You're someone who has no political representation, no representation without taxation, or no taxation without representation. You're basically getting taxed without getting representation. And all of the politicians are elected by voters. So voters have no say in who gets elected, right? So non-voters, you have no say if you don't vote. The other side to this is on the policy. Policy is introduced by politicians, and then the politicians vote on the policy. So everything is just voting all the way down, turtles all the way down. Big Boda, Any last thoughts? And then we'll go to Talent, then Freedman Angel, then CJ, Sav, Lloyd, Black, and then Freedman.
Yeah, I wanted to answer that. As far as having no voice and stuff like that, I think the streets have a voice, that ends up landing on the political field. Now, the politicians weren't talking about reparations until we started beating the drum on the grassroots. They even brought it up on the campaign trail after we started demanding that they talk about it. And so it wasn't because we voted for them to talk about it that they had to bring it up. You see what I'm saying? So there's more than one way to skin a cat. And this political system, as far as both sides of the political system letting us get killed in the streets in these Democratic-run cities and Republican-run cities, that makes the system illegitimate to me. When you can turn either way and still your people is allowed to get killed, women and children, that makes that system illegitimate, and I'm going to look for other solutions other than marching up to a poll and putting in a vote for somebody that's not going to give me what's owed to me as far as tangibles and money.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So,
I agree overall, but then you said there's two ways. There's more than two ways. Our own party, the way that hasn't been sustained as long as we've been voting for other parties. So we need party, politician, and policy. These are the three real PPPs. That's the real come up. All these other gimmicks is not going to work. You can't have a party without the politicians and the policy, and you can't have the policy without the politician and the party. Can't have the politician without the policy and the party. So all these things go together. We have to work together, and we have to all be aligned. That's what they do now against us. And even in addition to the party, which is just step one, we need our own voice. That's why we created the Freedmen News Network, akin to what the Black Panther Party did with their Black Panther Party newspaper. At the time, they had the most circulated newspaper in the entire country. Can we get Freedmen News Network to be the most watched? Freaking Fox News, Tucker fucking Carlson is the most watched person in terms of Nielsen ratings. What the hell? You know what I mean? Let's put some effort into our own media, and then we need pull our money together with our own super PAC. That's why we're trying to get the Freedmen Super PAC started. So we have to pool our vote, our voice, and our value, and all bring it together to get our own political agenda accomplished. Let's go to Talent next. Any last thoughts, Talent?
Oh yeah, peace. My last words is critical mass. It doesn't demand too much. Those who are about the work just become the critical mass, because few will always lead the many. I also want to say that I respect the scholarship and the facts that you came with in this room. This is the type of space I like to be about, where, let's pull up the documents, let's read word for word what's being said, what's being used. I don't want to hear what somebody assumed, what somebody thought, what somebody believes. No, let's look at it and really examine it from the perspective of before to now, to what we need to do to rectify things to move forward. I've had a lot of hesitation towards the Freedmen embracing that. I'm heavy American Negro, but I learned a bit. I learned a bit based on what was shared today. That definitely is giving you my support. So I definitely want to say, continue to work what you're doing. I'm standing down on it. Still heavy American Negro, but I definitely have a strong understanding on the freedom status, the protections that were created for the American Negro, and to my ending as I land. I believe it's still really on the books. I just think we ain't got the people in office to enforce it. It just seems as though they just kind of now neglected. Let's just turn a blind eye. They ain't saying nothing. Let's try to black power. Let's try to African American. Let's try to black power. And until let's get Obama to take me from the system. Get Biden to do it, it might not work. But yeah, it just seems as though these things are in existence. So we gotta participate to the highest level on a critical mass. The demand of 40 million plus of us get on cold. I think we economically, from a genocide, we tired. We still ain't get what we was owed. We keep getting. We thought Obama was gonna be the one. These psyops that we have. I definitely value your perspective. I value that. You definitely got my
my support. So I'm down.
Hey, thank you for that, brother. And you could go by Negro American Freedmen. You know what I mean? It all works out. But yo, check it out. I feel like in terms of the 21st century, Obama, Kamala, and BLM were the biggest like anti-freedmen like movements ever, right? Like we got finessed 3 times. Well, we didn't get finessed by Kamala. That was just kind of a shoe-in, but still, we know she's not Freedman, right? And she's the first black vice president, blah blah blah, right? So, anyways, like we need to be thinking about getting back to uh, organizing, not giving up our. Because even when we said Black Lives Matter, we really meant Freedmen Lives Matter. But then that got all finessed and turned this way and that way. So basically, now that we've gone through those like traumatic experiences, like in the modern day, like I don't think it's gonna happen again. We're organized now, moving towards more organization where we are all on code. Um, the fact that there's 20 million of us voting is a good thing, but the fact that there's 12 million that's not, when the Democrats are only 13 million strong, like we could get the Democrats and Republicans out of there. Democrats are 13.4 million, but the Republicans are only basically 500,000, 600,000. So they don't have as much political power as the independents and the non-voters. So if we come together as non-voters and independent freedmen, we can silence everybody else. And the freedmen that are voting Democrat right now, 58% of them voted for reparations as their number one issue on the CBC poll, right? So 58% of 13.4 million is about 6 to 7 million people. So that's at least 6 to 7 million people that would be willing to push the cause of reparations, most likely regardless of the party that gets it done. So if the Freedmen Party can do that, let's do it. So um, thank you, Talon, for that. Much respect to you. Freedman Angel, you're next up.
Yeah, once again, I really want to thank you for this space. It's really been excellent, the information. And I just love these type of spaces that provide real tangible, actionable information that you can really use. To me, that the new caption, the Tariq versus Checker, is to me a metaphor for how fast things can get basically derailed and just get distracted with basically nonsense. So once again, I appreciate the information and just the things that we do that are really tangible and that we can really go forward with. I'll land my plane.
Yeah, definitely. When I go back through to the Black Panther Party and the history there, it's just amazing. One fact is 80% of all the actions that J. Edgar Hoover's COINTELPRO took were against the Black Panther Party, right? And then the other thing, when you go back through all the Black Panther Party documentaries and stuff like that, they were writing letters. Like they did this to Martin Luther King. They were writing letters to other people on his behalf saying like this. They were doing the same thing with the Black Panther parties. Like what they did when they got Huey P. Newton and I forget his name. Was it Eldridge Cleaver? Yeah, it was Cleaver. On the TV and interviewing and going back and forth. That was a setup by the COINTELPRO, and they got the media to broadcast it. You know what I mean? So we got to recognize that, let's not get our egos mixed up and fighting back and forth. That's not important. We have the same goals, so we can work through the differences on strategy. And sometimes we need to do things multi-pronged, meaning like someone tries this, someone tries this. Like we're not a monolith as freedmen, even though we share a lineage, right? So that's super important. So don't get caught up in all these like civil wars, I call them. Like I've seen all these civil wars pop up, and I'm just trying to dodge them. This is the first time I've made a space titled something like this, but that's just for fun, right? It's just like a troll. But it's true. It's kind of like, man, this is getting old. Like we got to really see if these things are happening. There's a purpose behind them, right? If it's not moving us forward towards a goal, then it's WMD, a weapon of mass distraction, right? Don't get nuked. You know what I mean? CJ Willis, let's go to you, then Sav, then Lloyd, then Harriet, then Black, then Freeman.
I just want to thank everyone for coming in. I want to thank Eric, the host. I want to thank the co-host. And I just want to reiterate what I said before, really, because building on what Harry said, posted, we need 100,000 Marcells, 100,000 Lloyds, 100,000 Savs, 100,000 Harrys. We need young people who want to work on campaigns, and we need people that want to run, young and old. I encourage everyone to follow the Freedmen Party. If you're not following the Freedmen Party, take that test, get in when you fit in. Maybe you be the person that run. Maybe you know somebody that will run. Maybe you just support the people that run. Mm-hmm. Maybe you work on the campaigns of the people that run. But we all need to do this together. And I land on that piece of reparations.
Hey, thank you for that, CJ Willis. I really appreciate the support. Definitely, everybody go through the boot camp. Even if you don't feel necessarily that you'll run for office, just go through the boot camp and check it out. You may be surprised. You're certainly eligible if you're older than 25. And even on the local levels, the age differences, sometimes you only have to be like 21. You know what I mean? The other important thing about this is in terms of like our political power, we have to realize that they didn't try to stop us from voting because our political power didn't work. It worked. That's why they tried to stop it. The drop that we see after 2016 in our voter turnout is a direct result of us being finessed by Obama. You know what I mean? Like, we were just pissed. Like, God damn, how the hell we get finessed twice? You know what I mean? And he not even Freedman. So we thought he would go. We were like, okay, he didn't do reparations the first time, but these next 4 years, you know what I mean? Still didn't do nothing for us, you know? Now he giving podcasts talking about with Bruce Springsteen talking about, yeah, I couldn't do it because white people get mad. Like, really, bro? Okay. But yeah, we just got to do the work, hire our own people who are politicians, fund them, give them the money they need, give them the votes that they need, and then give them the policy agenda items so that they have what they need to get passed. So thank you for that, CJ. Sav, let's go. And then Lloyd, Harriet, Black, and Freedmen.
Yes, no, thank you, Freedmen Party, for hosting the space again. Learning a lot, definitely taking a lot in and penciling in too. Want to make note that I've been one of the people to say that voting is not enough, but following up too, and making sure it's important that yes, voting alone is not enough. We need our political party, we need our 100,000, and then starting to build that out. But then also too, taking back over, getting airtime on the radios, televisions, getting maybe our own newspaper, just like a one centralized location where it won't be our words that won't get messed around, But then also too, taking a look back at ourselves and just figuring out and building out our own moral code, but then also and not being the first to throw the stone, but then embracing and being okay with people's differences, right? Because again, I think that's what's the beauty in all of us, that we all have different backgrounds, different ideas, and different ways to approach things. And one way may not be just the best way, right? And just being careful with mental health and taking care of ourselves in all of this, because this is taxing. This is something that, again, we may not even see our lifetime. It may be our grandkids. So it's not something that's going to be an overnight sensation. I mean, I'd be glad if that's the case, but just making sure we're staying up politically, making sure our education, understanding political education and how that works. Again, you got to put a lot of emphasis on. A lot of people just forgot about the way that checks and balances work, right? They forgot that nothing really affects us, and really, more so locally versus nationally. Understanding the importance of getting to know your local politicians and leaders, right? And maybe just utilizing the things that's already been done. We've already had tools in place in the past, and just we don't have to do anything over, nothing new. We already have the tools set before us. So everything was said beautifully tonight. Thank you again. But yes, peace to everyone.
Thank you for that, Sav. Really appreciate it. Definitely agree with you. We got to protect our mental health. You know what I mean? Like instead of like going into all these beefing spaces, take some time, meditate, pray, think about what you're gonna do with your reparations. Start manifesting your reality because I know the more work we put in, the more and more I'm thinking like reparations can happen any day. And I don't think it's something, even when we get our reparations, we still need a party. We still need our policy and our politicians. Like it doesn't stop. Um, the Democrats didn't die because they won the Civil War. They kept going. They still around. The Republicans too. So we have to understand that our institutions need to be permanent and they need to be with teeth in them, meaning they have political power. Um, we have to be able to change our environment. So the only way to really do that is politically. Um, Lloyd, you're next up, and then Harriet, Black, and Freedmen.
Okay, I've been waiting a long time. Okay, so and I don't remember who said it, but somebody said the Democratic Party started talking about reparations because of the work we did. Well, or the grassroots did. Not quite true. Grassroots worked really hard, but let's talk about what really happened. Reparations did not come up as an issue until Tom Steyer in 2020 brought it up. Tom Steyer was running for the presidency. And one of the first things he came out with said, I'm giving reparations to, and I hate the term, but this is the one he used, African American. And then you can go online and see this YouTube that he did about the least prisoner program. He said he had been to, I think it was South Carolina, and they were explaining to him the least prisoner program, and he was just mortified because he didn't know such thing could even exist in America. And he said, no, Black people deserve reparations. Mm-hmm. And every single time that there was a debate, he brought it up. Kamala was running; she wouldn't talk about it. Cory Booker wouldn't talk about it. The white boy was talking about it. So fast forward to the vote. Black folks didn't come out for Tom Steyer, who's going to give you reparations. We came out for Joe Biden, who wrote the 1994 crime bill and a bunch of other stuff that put us in jail and keeps us down. My point is this. You have to understand the power you hold as an individual, and more importantly, how that multiplies infinitely when we combine it into one vote, one voice. Mm-hmm. No solos, one song. We all singing in the choir. If we had voted for Tom Steyer, we'd have reparations. But what did we do? We let Jim Clyburn tell us, oh, Mr. Biden's been my friend for 30 years and he's a good person, even though he put your kids in prison. Even though he made his political bones on anti-busing. There's a whole bunch. So my point is this, and then I'll land, is that each one of us has a responsibility to understand who we are voting for or not voting for, and what the consequences are of us voting for that person or not voting at all. We must understand there is a consequence. And usually the consequence is we have a president, Black people, everybody agrees, Black people elected a president that felt very comfortable 2 weeks before an election to say, I think it was, what was going on in 2021? It was election in 2021. Anyway, he said he wanted to give $450,000 to every single individual whose family was torn apart at the border under Donald Trump. That means if you had a family of three, you get $1,200,000. Family's going to get $1,250,000. And yet, we did not stand up for Tom Steyer, but we stood up for this fool. That's our fault. And for those of you that didn't vote, that's your fault. And for those of you that didn't bother to find out what these people stand for, that's your fault. I will take responsibility. I didn't work hard enough, but I promise you coming up 2024, I'll be working real hard. And what I'll be doing is I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to make sure that you understand that you are educated on what the real issue is. And I'm going to land there.
Hey, Lloyd, I agree with you. And actually, just to add to that a little bit, the reason the reason Obama won was because of us. Now, not everyone likes to hear this, but the reason Trump won was because of us. And the reason Biden won was because of us. Now, instead of taking our anger out on Obama to elect Trump, and then instead of taking our anger out on Trump to elect Biden, we need to be taking our anger out on our genocide and our lack of reparations and putting our own candidates like Lloyd and Marcel, like Camilla Moore, like Tamara Johnson-Shealy, like Reverend Somerville into office. That's the way we need to direct our anger, not at self-sabotage, but in building ourselves up and showing we have the power. One of the quotes, and I hope I don't butcher it fully, from Reconstruction, this lady, she was talking about what was happening and how the white supremacists were trying to stop us from voting and how important the election was. She said, every freeman must make it their business to register to vote, and whoever doesn't, we will deal with personally. And she said they will be branded as a white-livered coward who would sell their liberty. And I was like, damn, this is people in Reconstruction talking about how they see the value of the vote. So we have to understand our power is significant. All we need to do is apply it in a direct manner. Harriet, you're up next, then Black, then Freedmen.
Man, peace, power, reparations, family. I had to step out and make a phone call, but I see you change the title. This is my first time seeing this title. Anybody plays this back or what have you. I'm gonna change it to something, but earlier you all just getting in here when I first came in here earlier. I made a point that my brother from the Freedmen Party, you know what I'm saying? He don't be getting a lot of people in his spaces like he needs to. You know what I'm saying? And that's no knock to him because he be bringing the heat on this legislation that we need to go forward. And this is the information that needs to be heard. We need to be running for office. We need to be the change that we want to see because clearly the change that we want to see and be a part of hasn't worked for us voting red or blue. These are the conversations that we need to have. So just as a much and extra that we put in all of the madness going on, even outside of that situation, because we're not trying to bring fight to it, like I said. You know what I'm saying? It's just all this unnecessary madness going on takes away from rooms like this, spaces like this, when we're building and creating tangible and actionable items that we can take out that's really going to help us in our political advocacy as far as reparations and beyond.
Bro, 100%. And I don't know if you missed the part we was trolling about what we should change the space to because it's just on some shits and giggles. But one of the things to speak to what you just said, Harriet, and what I forget how to pronounce the name, but it was something Boda. Basically, if you don't see any candidate that you would be willing to vote for, then that means you are the person that needs to be running for office. That's what it means. It means you feel that you're more qualified than anybody else, and you're so disappointed by your options that you don't want to vote. But instead, you need to realize, no, I need to run because I don't see anybody that I would vote for. You would hopefully vote for yourself. so run and give people someone to vote for. You know what I mean?
I actually wanted to add because I definitely wanted to say what I said, but this is what I really wanted to get into. Brothers and sisters, my Freedmen brothers and sisters, foundational Black Americans, you all have a support system.
Mm-hmm.
If you all go out and run in your respective House of Representatives, where you are, or Congress, or what have you, we will be there. The grassroots will be there. The Freedmen Party will be there. You are not alone. Okay? we are in this together politically. We have to get politically involved and activated. You know what I'm saying? So if you're really about this and you're really about being wanting to see the changes you want to see, don't think that you're alone, because that's probably gonna be the first thing that's gonna come to mind. Where I'm gonna get the money? Who's going to support me? No, if you're really something for the people and you're really doing this with an open heart and for the right intentions, we will be here for you. Okay?
Exactly, 100%. I wanna be funny real quick. Let me see if I can bring this up. I'm still on Where does he say that? I'm trying to find the part. He's like, you are not mine. You just had that flash in my head. I'm so dead. But yeah, anyways, just trying to throw some humor in here. You know how to mean. Black, you're next up. And then Freedmen.
Okay. Hey, thanks for giving me a chance to speak again. I'm going to just say salute to the room, salute to the host. I do appreciate the information. We definitely got to have a private conversation. But salute to everybody in the room. Truly, truly appreciate you.
Yes, definitely, Black. Let's keep building. Me and Black, we was breaking down these districts the other day. Next, we about to do states. So we about to figure out how to take over majority states, majority districts, and even places where we may not have a majority but have more blacks than white. There's power there too. So we found, at least in Congress, out of the 435 seats, we have 53 of them. But we looked at all the seats. There's about 6 seats that we could have in Congress that we don't currently have, that have black majority districts. Now we're going to look at the Senate next, and then look at the Electoral College. But we're finding opportunities. We're searching for gold, and we're finding it. So, searching you will find. You know what I mean? We just got to keep putting in the work. Free one, go for it, bro.
Just shout out to the host. Shout out to the Freedmen's Party. Shout out to the Freedmen Party members. Shout out to all American Freedmen. Much love, respect, and reparations to the American Freedmen. To get a chance, we have our GoFundMe information in the Jumbotron. Please donate and support if you can. And if you want to, you can join the Freedmen's Party. And our website is freedmen.party. You get a chance, plug that into your website. It's freedmen.party. That is the website. You can join. You can go there and see our calls to action, what we have. You can just tweet and share those out. It's easy as that. We have a store where we have information, books, and tons of other useful and educational information on our links. As usual, the space was very educational. It was awesome, and it was great building. Just even discussing the Freedmen's Bureau's Act and the Freedmen's Bank Act. Just learning something new. We learn something new when we just talk about stuff like that. When we just building with each other, making ourselves stronger. I look at it as iron sharp as iron. And hey, everybody have a great night. Thank you everybody for contributing and coming through. And if you're listening, thank you for listening. And hopefully you can, if this is new to you, maybe you can apply this new knowledge that you learned, or just reflect on it. So thank y'all for coming through. Shout out to the Freedmen Party. Shout out to Eric. Hey, catch y'all later.
Thank you for that, free one. Definitely appreciate you helping co-host the space. You're a real one. Free one's in the party, so I really appreciate his support. Everyone could join the party. Basically, if you join as an official member, you have voting rights. Unlike, if you tried to join the Democrats or Republicans, you're not going to be able to decide shit. Let's just be completely honest. If you join the Freedmen Party, you can have a say. We run it like basically parties are mirrors of the government. And the way we're doing things, we have a legislative, executive, and judicial branches. And basically the idea is the only difference between us and how it's currently designed in terms of the country, everyone can vote in the legislature, everyone can vote in the judicial, and everyone can vote in the executive. So basically it's more democratic than, the country is not no electoral college system. You know what I mean? But, one person, one vote. So come join the Freedmen Party, or just sign up for updates and be a Freedmen Party member and support in terms of voting And then your donations can support candidates, support our work, and things like that. So yeah, just help in whatever way you can help. Um, I know we ain't got all the biggest money in the world, so don't always trip about the money, but our vote matters. So at least if you could bring your vote to the table, we can accomplish a lot with that. Um, Again, I really appreciate all the speakers. Go follow the co-hosts. Go follow all of our amazing speakers on the stage. And I really want to shout out all the listeners. We've been here for 3 hours and almost 30 minutes, so I really appreciate y'all patience, y'all enduring this conversation. Um, and I'm gonna change the title back right before we close because you know what I mean. But it's just that was fun. That was a fun little experiment. Hey, we gotta have fun. We gotta, you know what I mean, be able to joke around too. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, black people run the culture. If we get involved, we can run politics. All we got to do is apply ourselves. We're the most. There was an interview I live streamed it on FNM with Huey P. Newton and Ishmael something. I forget his last name. But basically, all these people they were asking about like some Jimmy the Greek had went on and said, black people, basically run everything. That because they're like really good at sports and really good at this and really good at that. And then they tried to get Huey P. Newton to disagree with him. And they were like, "Do you agree with him, Huey P. Newton? Do you agree with Jimmy the Greek?" He was like, "Yeah, when you give somebody the worst food, the worst this, the worst that, the worst conditions in the world, you're gonna kill off the weaker gene lines, and all you're gonna have is the strongest, most beautiful, smartest, all the great adjectives you can imagine. That's what freedmen are, because we are the best of the best. We are the ones who made it through. You know what I mean? So out of that process, you're only gonna get diamonds. So that's why once we just apply ourselves in any way, we take over. So let's do the same in the political arena. Lloyd, did you want to say one more thing before we get up out of here?
Hold on. Yeah, I did. Just one thing. Y'all got a new member signing up as we speak.
Hey, I love it. I love it. Really appreciate it, Lloyd. Definitely want to, like I said, I already supported your campaign. We need to support more. We need to get everybody in here to get, like people were saying, more Lloyds, more Marcells, more Tamaras, more Somervilles. We just need to have a whole army running for office. You know what I mean? Let's make them afraid of Negro rule again. You know what I mean? Let's make that trend. All right, y'all. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the speakers, all the listeners. And yeah, this is another record, 3 hours, 30 minutes. And we made it productive. We weren't all beefing for 3 hours, 30 minutes. You know what I mean? So yeah, enjoy the rest of y'all day. Y'all could go into the more entertainment spaces now. You know what I mean? And just crack up. You know what I mean? I'll admit Tyreek is funny as hell. He be having me crack it up too. But we gotta. That's like I feel like Tyreek. Let me just say this really quick. I feel like Tyreek. You know how like the Democrats and Republicans, they have their own media wings. Like the Democrats now have Colbert and like the Fallons of the world. Like Tyreek is like our version of that. You know what I mean? Like he's our like late night show, like where we could go to him and he could just crack us up and also like be educational at the same time. And that's what we need. We do have different positions for everybody. Everybody has a position to play. So um, don't want to discount it completely, but like the beefing part, that's not productive at all. You know what I mean? You don't really see Jimmy Fallon and Colbert going back and forth. You know what I mean? They trying to get shit accomplished. So let's keep it all focused on positive stuff. Really appreciate y'all again coming, and we're gonna be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern. So with that, we're about to check out. Peace out.